So that's good. Right, apologies. Now, Bridget was to be on Zoom today. Are you with us, Bridget? Councillor Bell?
Your Worship, I've just had a message from her, which I checked on my watch, which seemed to be something about the internet or the connection. So I'll just have a look and respond to her.
It may be because the internet has been down. Yeah. Thank you. Otherwise, we have a full team. So we go to item 3, confirmation of minutes on page 6. There is a recommendation. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ford.
Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of February 2025 be adopted as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please?
Yes.
Councillor Quigley.
Your Worship, I'd just like to point out on page 10, I've been referred to as Grand Hadfield, and I wasn't quite sure whether that was a grand exit or a grand entry. Just grand, which was, which I very much appreciate actually. Anyhow, just a slight spelling here on page 10.
Thank you. With that error corrected, have a mover and a seconder. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, the motion is carried. Thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest. Any items, topics on the agenda today that members may wish to declare? None? Excellent. We've got no public forum this morning, so we can go straight to 6.1. This is our resident satisfaction survey. Welcome to Gina. She's going to join us, and there is a copy of the survey. Now, just before Gina and Francis start, as you're aware, we're trialling this to get the sound, etc. right. So we've introduced an extra TV screen down the end there so that presenters are able to look at the screen so they're facing the same way as us. And that will hopefully help the direction of speaking. So I'd be interested in your feedback after today. So welcome, Francis and Gina.
Thank you. Right, so this is our quarterly resident satisfaction survey. This is for the October to December quarter. We can see that unfortunately we have seen a bit of a decline in this most recent quarter. We are still sitting above that benchmark. I did ask key research about what other councils were experiencing, and they basically told me it was a bit of a mixed bag. Just over half of the councils that they have, so that's just about 9 plus us, have seen this similar declines to us, and then the other half have been, well, the other just under 40% have seen an increase. So unfortunately, no clear trend across the country about declines or increases, but at least we are still sitting above that satisfaction, that benchmark line. So the demographics unfortunately all went down, except with the exception of the 18 to 34-year-olds. They have actually seen an increase. Traditionally they have been quite low, but this time we can see that we're actually the second highest. 65 years and over are always our happiest lot, which is nice, so out of our 11 measures, we did see 3 unfortunately drop below their benchmark. We can see 2 of them here, which is waste management and water management. I think with waste management, there was just a not understanding of what it does, to be honest. And that's, I guess you just flush your loo when you don't know where else it goes. And with water management, I think most of that was actually related to taste and that sort of stuff and the smell of the water rather than anything else. Inquiry handling was our only of the main 11 that actually saw an increase compared to the previous quarter. So that's doing well. And then the other one here was value for money that went below its benchmark. There were a lot of comments in this around the messaging of back to basics. So I just think our community is very aware of what we're spending our money on, and I think it's more to do with our messaging than what we're doing, to be honest. So with our largest increases and decreases, we have seen 13 saw a significant decline of over 10% and 6 saw a significant increase of over 10%. The majority did decline this last survey. These are our most significant increases. The library continues to be really doing well in its new space, and we can see that not only from the customer satisfaction, but also the amount of library checkouts and that sort of stuff that has just skyrocketed after they've moved into the new facility. So our largest decreases, again, the odour of the water was one that did see a significant decline. I think this is quite a personal thing. Some people smell muddy water, some people smell chlorine, so I think it depends on what you're sensitive to be honest. So these are our actionable comments. So I went through all of the comments across the whole survey, and I pulled out that we could actually do something about. So I have some for the top one about the slots being too small. Infrastructure had already actually looked at this, and they had determined that they're not too small for the most average rubbish bags. With the transfer station needing a washing hands facility, they're going to look into that and see about the possibilities. The weigh station, well, we've already actually done that and have opened up our second weigh station, so this should actually stop that issue. With the caravan use in the rubbish bins, there was conversations about potentially having signs to direct them to where the transfer station is, and so there'll be the community team will have a look at what possibilities we could do around that sort of stuff. And then the roading team are going to have a look at that, the Rangeview Place car park. It's been completed. And there you go, it's been completed. Thank you, Hamish. And then with our key management actions, these are just how I work with ELT to work out how we're doing. And obviously one of the new ones will be those actionable comments from each survey and what we can do about the things that people are actually directly asking us about. And then our verbatim comments. These are just a general smattering from across the whole survey about each of the different things. And then, so yeah. Any questions or comments?
Gina, thanks very much. What's the sample size, total number of people?
About 140 per survey.
Right, and would they be answering all the questions?
Most of them will. Sometimes they don't. So with inquiry handling, a lot of them don't because they haven't had an interaction with council, so they don't answer those. And things like resource consent or building consents, not everyone answers questions like that as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just in terms of the 130 odd people that respond, what's the quantity that we choose in the random selection of people that go out? So in other words, how many ratepayers are randomly selected to actually participate in the survey?
So I think they go out with over 300, like
300 random selections.
and they use the electoral roll, and they send out letters, and then people can choose to either respond over the phone or on their online system.
So okay, so just over a third of people respond.
Yeah,
and I just noticed in here as well that 18 councils use key research. So does that mean there's only 18 councils? That we're setting the benchmark.
yes.
Sense of benchmark.
And what I have found is actually that's probably the most we will get. A lot of councils either choose to do it themselves or they use another company. Key research seems to be one of the more popular organisations to use across the country.
Yep, thanks.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. Gina, just in terms of understanding that, the trend, I suppose, and where we sit against the benchmark, is there any analysis of the statistical significance of that data? Or do we just kind of take it at face value?
So there is margins of error.
Mhm.
So anything within a 4% shift is probably not that significantly different. But apart from that, we do just look at the overall trends and that sort of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I was just going to comment, it's interesting looking at the demographics and that young people were very happy. And probably the group that, the group that's less happy is older males.
They do the pain.
Nothing changes.
That's
Councillor Campbell.
I was very pleased to see the our library committee hub performing well in the survey, which is really encouraging for a major project we completed last year. Just an aside, I had the pleasure of a visit to Hara the other day and went into their new library building. I don't know if anyone else has seen it. Beautiful building, way over the top, in my opinion. They spent $20 million on that, and a council that's about the same size as us. So I'm particularly proud of what we've achieved for less than half of that. Yeah, I think it's just a sign of responsible spending and a well-managed project that we did. And I have some sympathy for the government's comments about overspending in other councils, because I think that's a good example of it.
Thank you. Thanks, Gina. Thank you for the good work that you do here. It's always great to get feedback, but acknowledging that it is only a very small sector of our community, and always the issue is kind of is you don't know what the people don't know.
Yeah.
So that makes it's really hard about, but it gives us a trend and it gives us some areas to keep working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Hamish.
Thank you. And in addition to the statistical sort of overview of the work that the survey brings and the work that Gina does, the operational team also uses the opportunity to sort of come through any of those individual comments. So if there's a particular thing that's a gripe to a particular person, if it's an easy fix, easy win across the community and infrastructure team, they'll typically go through and pick those out. And if they can be actioned, they've been missed for whatever reason, we do use this as an opportunity to pick up those sort of odds and ends as well and get it done.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Hetfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Look, just on that, if I can, to Mr. Ward, the list of actionable comments, I'm assuming those are things that will actually be will be actioned. You know, the first two on the list is something that people actually mention quite often. You know, the size of the gap and somewhere to wash your hands. And actually, just Timona Park, I do notice there's actually seems to be a bit of permanent camping on going down there, but it's sort of not sure if officers are aware or not. Thank you. Yeah, but anyhow, it was just a bit of an update on those actionable comments and where they might land.
Yeah, so like I said, we can do a quick and easy fix. We will. Using the example of the slots for the blue bags. For everyone that complains about them, there's probably 10 that are quite happy about it. So we have looked at that. To date, we haven't made any changes there. It's one of those things that's probably easy to make it go away by making it slightly bigger, but actually I think the problem's quite isolated to a fairly small number of people. We might take on it.
Councillor Shaw.
When I go to the recycling centre, people get miles out of council, they've got to come up to comment to me as well. I think that was a narrow comment that it's a small slot for blue bags. It's just a small slot, full stop. A lot of people take their recycling in containers, and you used to be able to just go like that and empty your bin, because now you're having to. So I think a broader look at the slot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ford.
Just, I take my blue bag there and
I have filled it to its absolute maximum on a number of occasions and always got it through the slot. So I really failed to see what the problem was. I tend to agree. Yeah.
With your mail.
Stand up, Councillor Short.
Right, thank you. So, well, and that's a good example of, you know, that it gives us an idea of the things that niggle people in our community, but it's, you have to weigh it up about against those that it's okay. So, no late items this morning, no recommendations from committees. So we will quickly go through our community committees, Youth Council and Marae. If there's no highlights from the community committee meetings that have been held, that's fine. But if there is, happy for you to share them. Cheltenham Community Committee.
Everything seems to be ticking along here quite nicely.
Excellent, thank you. Colleton, Councillor Blackmore.
Yes, we received back the beautification plan for the village, really focused on kind of the crossroads between Colleton and Talmaria Boats. So the team are reviewing that. There's been a meeting with some of the committee from Hiwanui because the Colleton committee is quite interested in extending walkways in either direction, kind of the view that eventually they would join up to Fielding both ways. Obviously, that's a very long-term project, and there has been some work on the in the road reserve for putting in fibre. So they're now looking at, you know, clear pieces of dirt, thinking, oh, there's an opportunity. Can we do something quickly with some of it? So that's been the main focus. Our chair has moved out of the village and has stepped aside. Secretary took on the role of chair, which left a gaping big hole of secretary, which I have stepped into.
Thank you. Yes, it's great to see the landscape plan come to fruition. So that's great. Councillor Underwood, how come?
It's me, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
This has been a coup. There was a visit of 3 people from the Martin Community Committee. They were quite surprised that our community committees were allowed to set their own agenda and actually have some input. So it was quite interesting to have a different perspective about how they operated or were allowed to operate. They thought it was a good idea to actually have a councillor there. So to have a different sort of bring them up to date. But yeah, that was sort of a very interesting night.
So are there community groups, boards, or a committee?
Committee. They do in Rangitingi, they do have boards, but these are committees that are outside that. But yeah, as I said, the agenda is set for them by the council.
Interesting.
Dictators. I wasn't going to use that word.
Councillor Quarry.
Thank you, Your Worship. They once again seem to be ticking along quite well. There was an inquiry in regard to Wi-Fi for the hall and the library. And there seems to be a couple of communities that are interested in having Wi-Fi in their outlying libraries. So that's an area that we perhaps could look into in the future.
Great, thank you. Councillor Underwood, Rangitingi.
Similar problem there. They've lost their landline in the community centre, which is also their library. So they're interested in options around a phone line in there and also internet because they're wanting to put in some cameras that will require Wi-Fi.
And Councillor Short, Tangi Moana.
Tangi Moana met last week. It's good to hear that the Deep South project, although the funding from MB finished at the end of the last financial year, Professor Blaverick is still working with the community, which is fantastic, and they've formed a working group. 3 members of the community, Andrew Watts from Horizons, and our representative is Kenny. So even though the funding ran out, they are committed to still presenting us hopefully within the next 6 months an adaptation plan. So very appreciative that Bruce has continued to work with them, even though he was so passionate about them having a result. He's really doing all of his own back. So we really appreciate that.
That's really good news because the three Deep South projects that were done, the key one that was really succeeding was based at a marae in Wanganui, and the marae took over the role of it. So it was very clear that you needed a specific group who would get some benefit from it, from emergency management, had taken the lead role, and that's what was a bit lacking in Tini Moana. So I'm really pleased to see that.
Yeah, I think the Pūtiki Marae was sort of a bit ahead. They'd already done some work themselves, whereas Moana started with a blank canvas, and the school's still involved in the project as well.
Excellent, thank you. Youth Council, Councillor Blackmore.
Yes, the meeting this week was quite focused on coming up with an event for Youth Week. Youth Week is the 19th to the 25th of May, and there is some funding available through Arataiohi. So we would need to work pretty smartly to put in an application. And at the moment, they're looking at an event with a young guy called Sam, not sure of his surname, but he's from Spark That Chat, and it seems to be quite a thing at the moment. He's currently doing a tour of the North Island schools and things on Harley Davidson. So it seems to be the thing, so we're looking at that.
Excellent, thank you. Liaison councillors with our marae hapu, any updates of any meetings you've had since our meeting? Excellent. Perfect time. Councillor Hedfield.
Yes, I did meet with Francis Petty on Wednesday, the 26th of February, and so we just progressed and working on meeting every couple of months.
That's great. Yeah, it's good to see progress there. Right, let's move then, perfect timing, to officers' report, and the first one on here is 10.1. This is from the Fielding Civic Centre Trust. Welcome to the team. Come and join us up at the table here. Just grab a few more chairs and come and join us. We're on page 14 of our agenda. And they're a bit shy, some of these. Some of the team.
Mr. Chapman in particular.
Tony, you might want to introduce the other members of your trust that are here with us today, because I'm not sure all councillors would know them.
We have Lindsay Taylor here at the end, and Mark, yeah, and Carla, our manager, at the end.
Excellent, thank you.
Helen, my number 2. Okay, well, this is our Fielding Civic Centre Trust 6-monthly report, and I wish I could present it without reading it to you, but I've long lost the ability to remember 17 pages of text. I've spent some time considering what I think ought to be said by the way of the 6-monthly report, and what is perhaps expected of me as chair of the Fielding Civic Centre Trust. I understand the need to present figures to the council in order for councillors to measure how we are tracking. To that end, I've attached our manager's report that provides you with the detail. I do hope that it meets your expectations. A quantum list of numbers is not, however, what I think you ought to hear. May I ask you to remember what I said in my first report almost a year ago, that the number of people wishing to volunteer appears to be declining. Grants are becoming less in number and more difficult to access, and staffing levels need to increase due to the growing population in Fielding. And so it continues. In the last 6 months, whatever you thought the relationship between the council and the trust is or was, it certainly is not anymore. During the somewhat muddy period of our transformation to a CCO, both parties set about changing 20 years of history, custom and practice, aspirations, and expectations into a 2025 business. The trust may retain the same title, but now it must operate at arm's length from the council. The only control the council has is through the appointment and dismissal process associated with individual trust members. Even the SOE papers cannot have any elements of control. We need to manage this very carefully, as it is not the perfect solution to the vexing problems facing councils and their CCOs. Ask Mayor Brown of Auckland City Council and his relationship with his CCOs are progressing. For our situation, it has begun with a total rewrite of the original trustee and lease agreements, something incidentally that the trust has been asking to change 1 year after the first signing in 2005. It is fair to say, I personally believe, that it has taken a while for both parties here to fully understand what has happened, and its positive outcomes are proof that both sides of the debate handle the many complex issues very well. From your side, it is possible that we could personally name those that assisted from the outset to completion, but some of the staff helping in their shadows may be left out. So I'll say to the council, one and all, thank you for a job well done. From our part, we were insistent that not only was the change in the Act followed by appropriate words and documents, but also by intent. Our modus operandi has significantly altered. During this period of time, the trustees' members were called upon to exercise their obligations through many additional meetings with as little as one night's warning. Decisions were asked to be made by us to enable the council to meet its own timelines by the following day. We understand that your processes are quite complex, but please can you appreciate that we too are constrained by our own set of circumstance and rules. Perhaps timely to remind the councillors that of the 6 trustees and 1 advisory member, 4 are engaged in full-time employment, with 3 owning their own businesses. 2 others are part-time employees who also have business ownership. Those of you that have similar experience will know that the lights do not go out when you close the company's doors at 5 o'clock. I personally believe we do, however, have the best range of appropriate expertise available, more so than in any other previous trust, given our current position. It might also be pertinent to mention that the old trustee agreement had it been followed, and it might be also with the new, we would be left with only 3 members due to the retirement clause for trustees and the inability of the council through a period of a year to attract suitable people in order to reach a full complement of 9. It must be said that for 4 years, the survival of the Civic Centre hung in the balance. Now that it has been resolved to be replaced by certainty and by consultants that have and will continue to have a significant impact on our ability to perhaps match or increase our earnings over last year's income. We had advice from the industry that we would find it somewhat difficult during the refurbishment phase, and this has proven to be correct. We will be discussing this further with council officers. In the reading of your manager's report, you'll find that nearly 40,000 patrons passed through our doors in the last year, and that these numbers and our multi-million-dollar facilities were managed by a part-time manager and a part-time maintenance officer. Together, their hours up to about 1 full-time staffer. This situation is simply not sustainable. You might ask after this why we trustees bother. Let me put your minds at rest. The trust board and staff are passionate and dedicated to the task at hand, and that is to provide the citizens of Feilding with a class-leading facility at an affordable price. I will, however, finish off with some figures if I may. As a 20-year snapshot, we've spent nearly 1.5 million across our activities, including some capital expenditure, of which 1.75 million was recovered. That is a 250,000 on the positive side of the ledger. Of that, 0.9 million was made up from higher income and 0.85 million from grant funding. Being able to say we've continued to gather in more than we've spent over 20 years is a comfortable way to end a 6-monthly report. It does not include works required to bring the building up to an acceptable standard, however, and this work continues. But then again, it hasn't had a potential new build cost of millions of dollars either. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm happy to take questions should you show wisdom.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you very much. And yes, I agree with your comment. It's really good to see the progress and the signing for the new trust deed and lease agreement. And I thank everybody for their patience through that process. Carla, as the manager for the centre, I want to commend your report. And I'd also like to invite you, is there anything in your report that you would like to highlight specifically?
No, I wasn't aware that you guys had the report. That was a report to the trustees. So, yeah, sorry.
But no, that's okay. We'll open it up for questions from our team, and there may be some questions or comments, but it's a great report. It's well set out, and usage, etc. Given the ongoing issues that we're working with, it's going well, and the variety of activities and events is outstanding.
It is, it's doing well, yeah.
Yep. So thank you. Let's open it up for questions or comments, please. Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. Good morning. Your comment around the need for volunteers, I just wanted to clarify, is that specific to the need for trustees, or is there a broader need for the Civic Centre to have volunteers available?
Well, we've been operating for over a year now with only 6 trustees, 3 of whom, had we followed the requirement in the trust deed, would not be there now. And the council has been striving, and we've been pushing them to appoint what our maximum numbers are, which is 9. And we've had no success for a whole year of attracting new trustee members. So it only takes 1 or 2 to be away, and we struggle with quorum, and then our business just becomes laughable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Thank you. I see that our civic centre is an appropriate facility and an affordable facility for our community. And we've just heard an example of a comparison with a library in South Taranaki, which is quite a different scenario to ours in terms of cost. I believe that our civic centre is well managed, well governed, and if we had demolished it, we would have been talking a $50 million investment, probably. And so I believe that we've got the right facility. I acknowledge the fact there has been a bit of a rocky road the last period of time as we transition through to the CCO model. And I'm really delighted to hear your report today, Tony. And it sounds as though we've come out the other side and we're in good shape. I'm a great believer that a group of passionate trustees with a real community interest is a good model to look after our community facilities. And I just thank you and your trustees and your staff for you work through what has been a difficult time. And it's pretty exciting looking forward, I think. So thank you.
Okay, councillor Belsky.
Yeah, I want to take this opportunity to thank you too and your team for what you do there. One of the, in your report, you said there was a restriction for growth, maybe in having a bar. And what's the process of going through to get a bar license or?
Well, getting a bar license is not an issue for us. We've had a number of functions with alcohol in there, but it's only been a one-night licensed environment. We are very anxious to get a bar because we want to maximise the opportunity to have more money pass through our coffers. If we look at similar places in and around Palmerston that do what we do, they all have bars and they all drag in an income far in excess of what we can through the idea of having a function that is a total destination. I don't know what it is about New Zealand society, but if people go out and get dressed up and want to see a show, a number of them want to have a drink. And after sporting events as well. And we simply can't do that. It is one of our major projects this year to see if we cannot raise enough capital to actually create a bar. We think we have building, and you'll know why we can't go outside because the heritage constrictions. That would be a better solution, but it would also be a very more easy solution. So yes, we are striving towards having our final facility.
Great, thank you, councillor Underwood.
Thank you. I read in the report about it being the centre being used as a voting place and it was open for 2 weeks. Was that a financially beneficial thing for the centre, and also were you able to use it? I noticed 10,000 people came through, use it as a promotional time as well, or was there no, and also did it interfere with any of the regular users of the centre?
Well, it would have interfered with a few, but everybody understood that it was the time to vote in New Zealand, and a lot of New Zealanders like to vote. As far as promoting the Civic Centre, I think that 10,000 people walking through it was about the best promotion you could possibly get. So we were privileged, I think, to actually have it used in that regard. And we would happily do it again as long as we have plenty of warning, because as you know, we do have regulars that come every week to play badminton and other sports. But it was great promotion for the Civic Centre.
Thank you.
Thank you. And final comment from councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And I'd like to just follow on from Councillor Ford's comments, but I'd actually like to thank the Trust, Your Worship, for the way in which they've welcomed me into their midst, either as an imposition or an appointment or whatever. But I really appreciate the open manner with which the Trust has welcomed me to their meetings. So thanks, Tony.
Great, thank you. Thank you to all of you involved in the Fielding Civic Centre Trust and to our team who've been working alongside them. Right, so on page 14, there is a recommendation. If I could have a mover and a seconder, councillor Ford.
I move that the council receives the Fielding Civic Centre Trust 6-month report to 31 December 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hadfield. To put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Dean, for coming today. Right, so we now move to item 10.2, and this is the hearing of our development and financial contribution submissions. As you know, we've been out for a while in regards to the review of the policy to the community. The timeframe was then extended, and we've had a number of submissions. So today is about hearing from those submitters who wish to speak to their written submissions, and we had a few of those. But first of all, we do have a recommendation on page 27. And I'm happy to move that the council receive a report on the development of financial contributions policy, hearing of submissions, and to hear from submitters who have indicated that they wish to be heard. The seconder, please. Councillor Schultz, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. So thank you. So we will move through the submitters and right on time. So first up, welcome to Gary Thompson from Churcher Investments Limited. Thank you. Submission number 44. Thank you for your submission and thank you for coming today. And we will take your written submission as read. You're welcome to highlight anything from that, and then there may be some questions.
No, what I'll do is my aim here today is probably expand a little on the submission I put into you by giving you two practical examples of how council policy shapes what we develop and build. And we see that the current council policy is actually to the detriment of the expansion of fielding. It makes it very costly and doesn't take into account modern styles of housing. And I've provided two cases here that these are real examples of what we're trying to do. So let's have a look at case one and document one, what we call a dual living plan. And when I worked in Australia, a lot of the developers over there developed this style of housing for subdivisions that we're undertaking up in the precinct 4 area. And this style of houses, basically it looks like a standard house, but it has two dwellings under the one roof. They were extremely popular and very much in demand for quite a number of reasons. And let's just run through the case study of what happened when I approached council on these, of trying to build these houses. The first one was, why are they so popular? One, we now have quite a diverse population of people living in Finland. A lot of Indian or Asian families, a lot of Pacific Island families, and also quite a number of extended families. And this type of housing is very popular amongst them, where they like to live intergenerationally. So you've got a number of generations living under the same household. The problem we have with the housing that's available here is that it doesn't give that, we're building 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double garage houses, and it just doesn't allow the type of privacy and the type of living that these people want. They still want their own space. And they don't want to be living in each other's pocket. The other one and I approached a number of real estate agents here in Fielding, and they said, look, we really want this because this will enable normal Kiwi families to live together instead of shipping granddad and grandma off to a rest home. So they said, yes, these are very much in demand, this style of house. And the other one was the simple fact that somebody could come in and buy a house and perhaps rent out the other half, which would then allow them to pay the house off. So I thought, great idea, let's approach the council on this. And really, it was fascinating, the response I get. Again, it was fantastic idea, guys, but really can't do it under the current rules unless we jump through a massive amount of hoops. And remember, this type of housing looks like a standard house. There's no difference than anything else. 200 odd square meters looks great. But hold on, you class it as a multi-unit, which then comes under a completely set of different rules than a normal house. And then the first comment I had back was, oh, you're going to have to pay another development contribution fee because it's 2 units and you base your development contribution fees on household units. So you class granddad and grandma living with the family as 2 separate household units. So let's look at the practicality of that. So I go to document 2, which I then approached council for their planning advice. And to be honest, when I spoke to the planners, and they said, look, this is a great idea, but our current rules make this very difficult. And they tried in their planning advice to make this happen with their response back to me. But quite honestly, I would describe this as a word salad. Let's try and be helpful, but we can't really do it. And they did say, well, yes, you can build these houses if you want grandma and granddad or to live with you, but as soon as they die, you're then open to having to apply for resource consents, pay another development fee, and what have you. And my response to that is, realistically, who the hell is going to do that? You know, because we want to provide this type of housing, and here we are, we're opening ourselves up to the development contribution regime. Now, the interesting thing was, let's look at what we're doing with development contributions, you know, trying to put them up to $53,000 a site. So here we are, we have a house which looks no different than any other house. In reality, no difference in the stormwater. In fact, we're combining 2 living units into one, so we've intensified the living. There's no difference in roading. You're wanting to charge double the fee, which it's going to go from $53,000 for this particular house to $106,000 in development contributions. Would we build it under that? Not a hope in hell. So, I mean, this is the obstacles that are placed in front of builders and developers with your current regime. It makes it, you know, you are self-defeating in your purposes. You're saying we want intensified housing, we want different communities, but your very rules stop this happening. So let's go on to case study number 2. And this was a real example of what's happened. And this is, I want to discuss multi-unit housing in this case study. And I commend what you're doing here. You're saying, well, let's identify an intensification area for multi-unit housing within the Fielding Borough, and that's great. But why aren't people like us coming and building multi-units in there? Simply, it's just completely uneconomic to do so under your current rules and regulations. And let's have a look at what we tried to do up at Precinct 4. If you look at document 3 and look at the sections labeled 10, 11, 12, and 13. Now, that's 4 normal standard residential sections. So what I did is I went to our, the developers I worked throughout Australia. When we did a suburb or something, we put a huge range of housing within that suburb. We put multi-units, we put in standalone housing, but here, can we obtain that or do that sort of developing in Precinct 4? Not a hope in hell under your rules, because you stipulate one house on one title of a minimum size and a minimum distance. Sure, you have multi-unit rules here, but you try and follow those and try and design something that suits. It's impossible to do. So you're never going to get, or it's going to be extremely difficult to get, a range of housing that you require in Precinct 4 because your rules are against that. And the other thing you're now putting against it is these huge increase in development contributions. So let's look at the case study. Go to document 4, which I designed a multi-unit house set to fit on that, to fit on those 4 sites. Now, these are what we believed and were 4 quite attractive looking buildings. Each one housed 3 units. Would there be a demand for these? Absolutely, there would. Nice, modern housing, well built, well-constructed, warm, surrounded by other houses. I designed these houses to attempt to fit into the new multi-development rules, and I believe they would. I went to our planners here, GeoWorks, and said, is it worthwhile submitting this design to council? My answer was not a hope in hell, don't even go down that road. Because the rules are so restrictive that it'll just be a blanket no. And they were people that deal with your planning department all of the time. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go and hear this from the horse's mouth. So I got an appointment with your planning team and stuck this under their nose and said, look, we're looking at developing this up in precinct 4 on these 4 sites. We believe it will be a huge benefit to the town, and it was not a hope in hell. Don't even go down that road. Don't even try. So what we did is I sat down and said, well, okay, if that's the attitude, fine. Let's see if we can compromise somewhere in between, a single house on each one of those sites. And we came up with, if you go through to document 5, 4 duplexes. So 4 lots of 2 duplexes on separate titles. So we've put in a resource consent application for this particular project. We haven't put in a building consent, we've only put in a resource application to divide the land as such. And I can say, and this is we have received a resource consent application to do this 8-lot development. But here's the problem. We've done it under your old rules. We've done it under your old development contribution scheme, which is approximately 26,000 or so per site. All right. We're now looking at an increase to $53,000 per site, or somewhere in between. So what are we doing? We're loading massive costs onto affordable housing. I mean, you guys want affordable housing and fielding. You want intensified development. You want the diversity of houses, but under your development contributions regime, you're saying to each one of these buyers, sorry, we're going to lumber you with a $50,000, $3,000 cost for each of these units. So effectively, you're having the poor people subsidise the wealthy people, which in reality, to be quite honest, doesn't sit with me. Let's have a look at the notes.
Gary, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just that we are running out of time. Sure. And I do want to leave some time because there may be some questions from the team.
Let's just have a look at the notes then on and the thing that would influence the decision of somebody building these units under your new regime. Now I'll go down to constraints to construction on case study 2. Here you have, if we were to build that 4 multi-units with each one having a floor area of 200 square metres, no different than a normal house. You know, there's plenty of houses in Fielding that have a 200 square metre floor area, double garage 4-bedroom house, that's fine, has a family living in it, and are sitting on a separate section. And that's your ideal for precinct 4. But you try and intensify that, and under your development contribution rules, the same roof area, you're going to charge 3 development contributions for each of these blocks. So the development contributions rise for each of these blocks from 53,000 up to 160-odd thousand. And when we look at the numbers, you know, if we built 4 houses here, we would pay 212,000 in development contributions. If we build these multi-units, all of a sudden we're up for a bill of $636,000. There is no more roof area. There is no more stormwater. There is no more roading requirements. Yet we're paying 3 times as much. Would we build those under this proposed new ruling? Not a hope in hell. We just wouldn't go down there. We'll go somewhere else. We're not constrained, thankfully, as developers, and I alluded to that in our notes, we're not constrained by the Manawatū District Council boundaries. We can go anywhere in the country that wants housing and would welcome it. Why would we pay 3 times the cost to build an identical roof, building area of house. But that's what you people are asking us to do. And is it economic? Not a hope in hell.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. Thank you for raising this, and we do have all this information here and taking notes. One quick question or comment. It is an opportunity for questions so that we can gather more information when we go to deliberation. So,
sure.
Any question from any of our team? Councillor Board.
Thanks very much, Gary, for bringing, I guess, your particular issue to our attention. One of the things that we'll be doing as councillors will be taking note of, as we go through the hearings, the issues that we would like to discuss further with our staff team. So while we haven't got time to do it right now, I can assure you I've been writing notes frantically and I've got all the documents. We will be following up and we will be reporting back to you.
Don't get me wrong, we're not, as developers, we're not against paying a development contribution. We're not against contributing, but we are against what we see as inequitable charges. And this we see as being it just does not make sense. It doesn't align with your aims as a council with the expansion of the town, and it makes it uneconomic for us to build here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this morning. Thank you for raising that. Said that these are all part of what we'll be deliberating on and seeking.
Right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have the fathers. So we've got Peter and Ian. Welcome to the table. Good to see you again. So we have read your submission and you're welcome to highlight anything from that, and then there may be some.
Thanks for the opportunity. So we've also got Gary Messix from our Peter Manich, our regional policy analyst here as well. So we submitted a 3-page submission. I'll just go through some of the highlights of it, and we can go to a few questions. Our key recommendation for the development contributions, that the cost of new development should, in the first instance, be a cost borne by developers of that development, either directly as a requirement to construct such items prior to completion of development, or indirectly through payment of appropriate development contributions or financial contributions. It's particularly the case for the cost of any new community facilities, e.g. neighbourhood parks, 3 waters infrastructure or roading transport infrastructure that is required to service a new development. This cost can be passed on to all subsequent owners as part of the overhead cost of a new development. It is a premium that all purchasers of a new development should be expected to pay. In instances where it is not practical for the developer to pay directly for new development, will make a payment for a council-imposed financial development contribution, then the council should look at setting a targeted rate or a set of targeted rates payable by the property owners of the new development. However, such costs should not end up being apportioned to the general rates that all ratepayers must pay. If the facilities, services or infrastructure that are required for the new development are of no benefit to all ratepayers. So there is a concern that there's a bit of a thinning of the wedge, and in the future it might be expanded to general rates. So look, I understand that 45% of development contributions come from outside of Fielding, yet almost all of them are used within Fielding, is my understanding. So we obviously do support growth, but we also support our rural towns and communities that are essential for the farms around them. The backbone of the region's obviously economically is farming, And we are coming out of a downturn. This is the growth that we need to prioritise first and foremost. So these potential extra costs, we need to keep them ring fenced to some extent where they should be. There's also in the submission, we also touch upon UAGCs again. We council services and infrastructure used equally by all property owners. Federated Farms strongly supports the use of the 30% of total revenue allowed to be allocated to a uniform annual general charge. Where council services are in large part used by people, a uniform per property charge at least ensures that all property owners make some reasonable contribution towards such services. Where rates are not able to be apportioned to a UAGC or where services are only supplied to particular properties, for example, connections to a sewage disposal or public water supply, Federated Farmers support targeted rates. So there's a fair bit of stuff we've been through before in our submission. Just I'll if there's any technical questions and more detail of that submission, we can discuss that. But just briefly, we Federated Farmers, we're usually pretty good at pointing out when things aren't right, but we do come up with solutions. We have last month, and I'm not sure if this counts, if it was sent out to every council, but we have come up with a 7-point plan in restoring confidence in local body decision making. So I'll leave a copy of that, and in fact we can distribute that more widely electronically. So there's a 7-point plan there that I think this council will be quite amenable to in terms of how we get infrastructure paid for and quite a few issues going forward, which the country's having a lot of trouble with at the moment. So I'll leave it there leave it open for discussion and questions.
Thanks, Ian, and thank you for bringing to our attention that document. So we will get that and circulate it as part of our deliberation. Open it up for questions from the team. Councillor Ford.
Thank you. Just your comments around projects, particularly community facilities, and indicating that you felt more money was spent on urban projects, even if the development contributions were collected from rural. Are you aware that the council has a schedule of projects and it's broken up into urban and rural, and is available to the public?
Pretty sure it's in the long-term plan.
It's in the long-term plan. So there is information available, and that you can look at to see what the projects that have been selected are on the list. And one of the other comments we quite often get from rural is if the development contributions are being collected, say, in Rongotia, people feel that they should be spent in Rongotia, but actually they might even get spent in the money that's been collected. I mean, I can give an example. We put in quite a major walkway around Hawanui School over the recent years. Now, some of the funding for that came from rural development contributions, no matter where it was collected in the rural area. So just if you've seen some of those things, and maybe you might like to look at them further.
Thank you. Councillor Belsky.
One of the thoughts is that the development contributions, and what you are trying to tell us, I believe, is that the new developers should pay the full cost of that infrastructure to that area. One of the arguments, and I'd just like your thoughts on, is that new house or that new building, that is a new ratepayer to our district. So therefore, the overall advantage to all of the ratepayers is that there's another income coming in, and so therefore it does affect us way up in the hills. It does cause more income to come in for our council. So what's your thoughts on? There are two options here. One is the full measure, and the other one is that partly paid by the taxpayer. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, so we're not 100% option one. we think there's some sort of a hybrid, don't we, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We understand that the funding of facilities, reserves and infrastructure is interlinked. It's interlinked with rates and it's interlinked with user pays and development contributions. We say, because under the Local Government Act, development contributions must be linked to facilities, reserves or infrastructure that will be directly used by the intended development, meaning that the developer can only be required to contribute for infrastructure that will be necessary to service the new development. Okay, we recognise that that's not always practical. For example, if a new development is in an area where there's existing pipes, but they need upgrading, and the timing of that means that the pipes aren't ready to go in the ground, and the council wants to borrow some money to fund those pipes and pay interest on that loan, etc. That it's going to do a quid pro quo calculation of what it can take from the developer and what it can apportion to the rates. We don't have an objection with that, but we say in the first instance, as a user pays principle, development should pay for the cost of development, new development. But we understand that it could come down to rates, and what we say is that those rates should either be targeted rates on the new development in the future, so that they retrospectively pay for the council share of servicing that new development, or if it's a facility that benefits everybody equally, that should be funded to the UAGC. It shouldn't go on the general rate, because that money disappears into some kind of slush fund where it's not accountable. We would like accountability, and that's been one of our principles for good governance and local government.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, thanks, Ian. We're just having a quick look at the 7 policies in the document, and clearly there's some in there that would strike council's heart as being a very good idea, especially policy 3, where you suggest that the FAR rate should be 90%. So the question I've got is Feds actively pushing central government for some of these policies?
Oh, absolutely. So, most of these policies actually aim at central government making some changes and some different legislation. So so that's why I thought you guys would be quite keen on it, because there's a lot of it, because it's because that's a classic example where infrastructure's blown out, and it's just it's too hard to fund, and there's some stuff that's got to be centrally funded, and roading's a major, isn't it? So especially in this jurisdiction.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your submission and for your comments. And yes, if you could leave that document, we'll also get it electronically and circulate it.
Yep, I'll make sure it's emailed over.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, thanks once again. Thank you.
Right. Welcome up next. Welcome to Jeff Lane. Come and join us at the table.
Very much.
Thanks, Jeff. We have your written submission, which we have read. You're welcome to speak to it, and then there may be some questions.
Oh, thank you. I can come Bob, up. Yeah, thanks for your time. Show the opportunity. I'm probably going to rattle through it a bit. I'll try and summarise, but my submission is in favour of option 2. Obviously, I would like to not be here today talking about this, but under the circumstances, option 2, being that developers pay the growth component and ratepayers pay for renewals, etc., and the service component is the way to go. A significant amount of the spend and the projects funded and proposed to be funded by the DCs are based on council's view that these projects are beneficial to the prospects of the wider Fielding / Manawatū district. Summarising precinct 5 as a prime example. This investment by council is not to support growth in that area created by the private sector, but as a targeted investment with the aim, we must assume, of creating future opportunities and growth for the region. I assume that such investment is intended to provide benefits to the region, and therefore the funding burden should clearly be on all ratepayers, and it's unfair really to burden just private developers with these sort of decisions. So I submit that option 2 is the only fair and equitable option for council at this time. I do question the methodology used to establish the split between private developers and ratepayers. There's no real outline as to how that's been done. But I propose that further work and consultation is required to ensure the allocation is fair. The non-disclosure of spending funded by DCs has long been a frustration for me. The financials and project detail released with this consultation, to my knowledge, is the first time that such information has been publicly made available. I request that going forward that reporting of all DC spending and the collections of DCs going forward should be made public and published, not least quarterly. I also request that the council team up with us developers or with the development community to put in place an advisory board. Its role to ensure investment decisions are appropriate and that the recoup of costs is market-led, fair and transparent. So look, that's just summarising my position, but my main focus with this submission and what I've put together is I've just simply tried to look at the numbers. So just to rattle through a bit of what I've established, and I've tried to do my best to go through the projects, the numbers and the forecasting stuff that's been provided. And I just tried to put it into something that made sense to me. So the DC income expenditure has been provided to us for the last 13 years. So I've gone back and analysed this out, consolidated into a spreadsheet, which I'll show you in a second. I've not been able to break down the spend going back beyond the 3 years because obviously that all just got lumped together as past projects. But I mean, if you have a look at the graph, it's clear to see that even looking back to the 10 years, I think it is up to 2021, we're already $9.5 million in the red with regards to what had been spent under DCs versus what had been collected. But then, you know, you look at the last 3 years, coming up 4 years, we've doubled that. So I guess spending for the past 3 years versus the last 10 years, what do the numbers tell us? So firstly, there's been an explosion in council spending, with over half of the spend for the past 13 years having occurred in the last 3. So we've had over 30% of the total spend has been in the last year alone. So council's borrowed $14.5 million in the last 2 years. So the second point I make from looking at the data is that the income versus spend had a deficit of just under $9.5 million for the 10-year period to 2021, as I just touched on before. And my third point I wanted to put forward is the average DC income for the entire 13-year period is just under 1.5 million per annum. So I mean, this just raised a whole lot of real basic questions for me. One is, firstly, why was the DC deficit that was run over the 10 years leading up to 2021, why was that not brought to anyone's attention, and why were no adjustments made back then prior to launching into a hugely increased spending campaign since 2021? So yeah, and why would you accelerate spending from 2022 despite already being close to $10 million in the red? And the third question that comes from my head is, how was council planning to fund the $22 million spending program it committed to over the past 3 years? So I mean, for me, council must have known what it was planning to spend. The DC fund was already $9.5 million in debt. If council had addressed the DC issue back in 2021 or earlier, and advised the market of where DCs needed to go, obviously the market would have adjusted to reflect this. The reality is council's hidden the DC fund deficit, I believe, from the market, and as a result, development land sales have not reflected the actual cost to develop, like when you include the tax that gets added on the top from via DCs. So in my view, this has resulted in development land being overvalued. I'm going to go slightly away from my numbers that I've put up. Oh, sorry, can you go to the next slide? So that's just the numbers as based on what council supplied me. I've just tried to pull them together just to clearly show the numbers up to 2021, so close to 9.5 million, and now we're, according to the numbers provided, close to just over 23 million. I haven't put it in my submission that I made, but I did do a quick analysis on the future CapEx as well. So I looked at the projects listed and the spending within the numbers provided, and I put together a bit of a worksheet, which I'm sorry I haven't provided, but I'm happy to provide it so my numbers can be checked. But I basically went through and consolidated the future spend for the next 10 years. Council proposing, based on what I've seen, to spend just over 19 million through this period. So I've gone through those projects and I've separated out new roads and Three Waters spending. So this is based on the numbers provided. The spending on new roads is just under 9.8 million. So just over half the total spending. When I say new roads, I'm not talking about the upgrade of, I don't know, Root Street or Port Street or something like that. I'm talking about new greenfield roads being put on other people's land. So that's close to $10 million that they're projecting to spend on that. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is if we leave all other projects in the pot, i.e. the upgrades of the existing roads and services, the stormwater attenuation required, the total DC spend would be circa $9.3 million. So it would reduce to $9.3 million, which is around about $1 million. So if then we look at the last 13 years of DC revenue, which has averaged 1.5 million per annum, under this scenario, council could fund the required growth works when they exclude new roads and Three Water projects on private land, with around $500,000 a year available to help service the $20 million debt we've already run up. So based on these numbers, looking forward, there'd be no requirement to increase the DCs and stifle growth, but council does need to stop pouring money into pet projects benefiting private land without any specific cost recovery to recoup these investments. So that just, I haven't got anything on that obviously, but that's just looking at your future spending projections. I just want to quickly touch on the examples of Precinct 4 and Precinct 5. So if we can start with Precinct 4. Up here is what I understand to be the new roads that council's proposing to fund under DCs. It's been an accepted policy as far as upgrades to existing facilities and services to accommodate new developments is concerned that DCs fund this. I think we all accept and understand that such upgrades need to happen to support growth as it occurs. However, the DC fund source has been 100% from developers, not ratepayers. And I believe that the developers should have been consulted prior to council making the decision to move into investing in new roads and services and running up significant debt. So council's never sought an impact from the development community to invest millions of dollars to fund the infrastructure upgrades required to support new development into greenfield roads and services on private land. So, yeah, I mean, massive questions for me is why are developers, and the developers aren't necessarily here, we could be developing anywhere, being asked to fund these projects just because council says it's the right thing to do. So if we could flick to the financials now, looking at Precinct 4. So I've based these financials again on the numbers provided, and I've used option 2 to create it so that there is a funding split. So that's based on the proposal 2 that you put forward. So if we look at these, the spend in Precinct 4 on private land, so this excludes upgrades to existing roads. So I've done my best to split that out. So it's obviously was denoted that it was an upgrade of Port Street or Root Street. I left it out. Shows that just shy of $5.4 million has been spent so far. So that's on new roads built on private land and services. So Then if we look at the total proposed precinct for expenditure proposed by council on roading and 3 waters on private land, $12.3 million. So the spend on private land to date, it equates to 25% of the spend over the past 3 years. Now, I'm just saying council didn't need to spend on these new greenfield roads and services to support private developments. It chose to dictate the nature of the development and the location. I know of some cases where council has overridden private developer and landowner subdivision applications to pursue what council deemed to be best. So if the council had simply allowed the development of this location to be private developer led, the $14.5 million debt incurred over the past 3 years could have been reduced by 37%. So by spending on greenfield roads and services on private land, council is using private developer contributions made to support their developments and has effectively gone into competition with developers using their own money. So to me, this raises simple questions like why are developers funding the construction of roads and 3 waters on private land? Why did MDC embark on this spend when the DC fund was already $9.5 million in the red? And obviously the spend on these new roads and services has to be recovered. It's always going to have to be recovered somehow. So why did council not put specific targeted DCs in place for benefiting land to recover the investment? So that's my comments on precinct 4. Precinct 5. So look, I first learned of precinct 5 back in the 2018 long-term plan. I think that was the first time it was presented. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I personally submitted against it at the time. I didn't believe, as my position is today, that DC funds for the investment in precinct 5 roading on private land was appropriate. But back then in 2018, the scope of the project and spend proposed only total a funding requirement of $1.3 million. So the map up on the screen shows the extent of what's been completed today. Approximately 250 metres of roads being constructed. I do know there's been some work happening out on Kawakawa Road to support that, but at the end of the day, that's all we've got. We can flick to the numbers, please. So now, using the same scenario that I just outlined for precinct 4, what's been coded against precinct 5 Turners Road construction today totals nearly $6.7 million. The total proposed precinct 5 Turners Road funding, when you combine both options, nearly $13 million. So this is a project presented by council at a cost of $1.3 million in 2018. It's increased by 990%. So the numbers provided show the spend on roading alone for the initial 250 metres, which on the last slide I had up there marked, cost $3.3 million. It's $13.2 million a linear metre. There's approximately 900 metres of road that I can work out that's yet to be built to complete the connection through the Turners Road from Kawakawa. I'm a bit perplexed because you look at the budget and so the roading cost for the next 900 metres is budgeted or forecast to be $1.2 million. So that's $1,333 a linear metre when it costs, close to 10% what it's cost to do the first 250. So what I suppose I'm trying to highlight there is when going through the numbers, there's a lot of things that sort of put red flags up that how much confidence should we have in the numbers being presented going forward? And is there a real potential here that it's not 54 or 37, it's actually in 3 years' time we're going to be sitting here and it's 67 because that's suddenly become $3 million instead of $2 million and the next thing's blown out. So the spend on precinct 5 to date, using my same analogies going back to with precinct 4, close to 30% of the total spend over the last 3 years. So as with the Greenfield Roads and Services in precinct 4, council didn't need to spend on precinct 5 to support private development. Again, it chose to push and invest in this location, I guess to try and promote future growth opportunities for the region. It can be argued that this benefits developers, but equally, it can be argued that it benefits all ratepayers and the wider community, so therefore the funding burden should reflect this. If the Manawatū Council had allowed the development of this location to be private developer led, again, the $14.5 million debt incurred over the past 3 years could have been reduced by 46%. So questions just thrown into my head though, very similar. It's how was the cost associated with the project? How's it increased by nearly 1,000% since 2008? Why did council embark on this spend when the DC fund was already $9.5 million in the red? And how was or is the DC fund going to recoup this investment? So look, just to summarise, in my opinion, council should not be actively involved in development. DCs should be solely utilised to fund downstream infrastructure and upgrades required to support actual growth. The DC fund has been provided by private developers and should not have been used by council to fund new projects such as Precinct 5 and Precinct 4 greenfield developments.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. Conscious we're running out of time. You've raised a number of questions in there. Thank you for those, and they will be part of the deliberations and responded to. I guess just the overall first comment you made about council being transparent about figures and budgets, etc., around DCs. We do that. Our LTPs give projections for DCs for the next 10 years, and our annual plan reports outline the spend that's been made with development contributions. So that information is there. But thank you for your submission. Thank you for what you've raised today. Is there a quick question from anyone from our team? Councillor Blackmore.
I do have a question. I'm not sure how quick it is. If you talk about being private developer led rather than council, can you describe for us how that works when a large development like Precinct 4, roading is networked, water services are networked, you might have a number of developers working together. How does that work? Or how could that work?
That's how it does work. So council has a plan, you put in a consent, and there's a set of rules and criteria that you have to comply with. You need to get engineering plans approved. Council looks at those and says, how's that all going to connect in? How's it all going to work? If you've got multiple developers, you can have, what do you call them, guys? The little strips, so that you can maintain connectivity going forward. So they can make it a condition so that you don't do nasty things to try and block someone else from being able to develop. Those processes are already there and have been working for years. Winding back even further, they used to just take a development and look at it and say, what is the downstream impact of that development connecting in? The council used to work that out, come to us and say, this is what we're going to have to do to the network to take that growth. And they'd itemise that, work it out and make you fund that. And that was how your development contribution was based. So it was based like an effects-based thing.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff, do you believe that there is parties there that would fund Precinct 5, Turners Road extension right now, so the council didn't have to do it?
Let the market decide. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, if there's demand for land, you don't put a road in unless you know you're going to be able to sell sections and stuff off the ends. That's why development does ebb and flow a little bit, because we don't want to go broke while the interest chews away at us when there's no market. So you've got to try and get your timing right, and it is a gamble. But at the end of the day, if there is demand for down there industrial land or commercial land, private guys will do it. If the buyers are there and the market's there to buy it, they will do it.
Thank you. Thank you. We do have run out of time. Again, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the work that you've done. And like I said, we will come back to you on all of those questions. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break and then be back to carry on with our submitters. Thank you. Yeah. Right, we will reconvene our meeting and continue with our submitters for development contributions policy. Welcome, Hamish O'Brien, come and join us at the table. Thank you for your submission, which we have read. You're welcome to speak to it, and then there may be some questions.
Yeah, I imagine you've read a lot of documentation, so I'll just read through my proposal and then ask any questions, sure. But we'll just note that on the 28th of February, there was an announcement from Chris Bishop around the development contributions and the potential replacing of the country development contributions with a development levy system. So we are aware of that, but obviously that was only made known on Friday. So the submission is made on behalf of myself. So I wear a number of hats. Basically, I'm here as personally as a ratepayer in Fielding. Also director of Goldspear Construction, which is a commercial building company, but then also near Terra Developments, which is a commercial developer, and Manawatū Property, which is a residential developer. So sort of believe that submission has made a lot of background and understanding behind the policy. So my initial comments are that we do not believe that either option, being option 1 or 2, is the correct option to be going with moving forward. But with that said, as a submission is solely about choosing between option 1 and 2, we have selected that we would support option 2, where developers pay the growth component and ratepayers pay the renewals and increased levels of service component in the future project. In addition to the above selection, we note the following additional information and concerns that we have with the proposed change. One of the concerns is, I believe, the substantial increase in development contributions will immediately hamper the short-term residential growth within the Manawatū district. This comes at a time when it is already extremely difficult to get projects across the line due to the current economic climate. So I believe this will be the tipping point on a lot of future projects. There's also the very real possibility of lost development to neighbouring councils to consider, as they have substantially lower development contributions than that proposed by the NDC. Another concern is that for a number of years since from its inception, development contributions have been enough to keep up with the development, and it's only in the past few years where the council have taken it upon themselves to complete their own developments, where the pot has now run dry, so to speak. In addition to the above statement, on the council website, it states that interest and construction costs have increased significantly over recent years, and we need to significantly increase development contribution fees to cover costs. Whilst we do not dispute that the costs have increased significantly, the increases are far lower than that proposed increase in the development contributions, which is in excess of 100% in some cases. As our core business is within the construction industry, we believe that we are suitably qualified to outline that whilst costs have increased substantially since mid-2021, the increases are within a range of 30 to 40%, which is much lower than the proposed increase percentage from council. Our preference in lieu of such a large increase would be for the council to look at first how the money is being spent, and then work out a way to operate with the funds that will become available, taking into account potentially a smaller increase of say 30 to 40% to sit more in line with the increase in construction costs from mid-2021. This is how a private company would be forced to work, as they would not have the ability to say increase the price of their product by over 100% without the fear of complete loss of business. In conclusion, we believe that both options are a short-sighted fix, and further work and investigation should be completed before a final decision is made. We believe this should be completed with the help of a dedicated focus group made up of some of the more progressive local developers to work together and help implement a solution to the development contribution shortfall that has a more long-term focus for the growth in the Manawatū district. So I won't elaborate any further on what I've provided because I'll just go off on a tangent, but I welcome any questions.
Thanks, Hamish. Thank you for that. You're saying that you're reluctantly supporting option 2 and that you think there's a better solution. Just very quickly, what's a solution that you think we should be considering?
So Jeff touched on it earlier, and it's more around how the development contributions are being spent, and then working with a local developer, like a forum, to help projects that we believe are gonna help. And then where we think, and it's more around the roading side, is that rather than the council getting involved in the roading, is that working with local developers, and potentially there might be 2 or 3 landowners where a road's going through to work collectively to deliver a project. We've talked high level about understanding that the council will have a plan. So they don't want to have a whole lot of cul-de-sacs, they're individual cul-de-sacs, which is a favourite of residential developers, that there might be a unilateral plan of what the council want to see in terms of roading. And that might require multiple developers to work together to potentially put sort of like an arterial road through their development, but have that funded by the developers themselves, and then come back through.
Thank you. Any questions from the team? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Hamish, for your submission. Yeah, I imagine you've probably done developments in other council jurisdictions.
Yeah, primarily with Drumslow City Council.
And what are some things that they do differently over there that you think we should take note of?
Well, I believe, but without getting the figures, that their development contributions are of similar value. We have looked at, and this is just a high level approach, because this is far reaching, that you look at the cost or the benefit of the community, or the benefit of the development to the community. Because we're a commercial construction company, typically a lot of our development contributions are paid for as commercial, which is very different to the residential side. So we've worked with council in the past to establish on brownfield sites what were the previous sort of developments that were in place, and working with council on that. It's hard to say, but I feel I speak for myself, but privately we do this every day. Development is inherently risky. The most successful development companies are typically run by 1 or 2 people, because you need to operate on a swivel, you need to take big risks. Most people think development is easy. They look to developers that make a lot of money, but typically if you took 10 developments, you might have 2 that go really well, have 2 that go fairly badly, and then you might have a couple in the middle that just go either way. I don't believe it's for councils to do. I don't believe councils will make a successful developer because they are too risk averse and there's too many people involved, and that's just my opinion. You need to be able to make a decision quickly, and so I think it should be left to the developers. And as Jeff mentioned in Precinct 5, if growth is there, then they will make it happen. So the landowners around will pull together to get it sorted, to get the packages underway so that they can get the land available for new growth.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Bishop. We go back to this precinct 5 again. I just have a question that around that, as you said, the market, the developers, which is what Jeff's point is making, is that the feedback that we believe that we hear is that developers do want us to do precinct 5, which is at odds to what you're actually telling us.
Well, I guess the thing is that the developers, each developer will want the council to develop right in front of them.
Their property. Yeah.
So to make it fair, how do you make it fair? And this is where we've talked about, and potentially where the central government is pushing it, is if overnight the council rezone rural land to residential land, at the moment we're point term, but they become an overnight millionaire because their land goes from rural cost per square metre to residential to sale. They will sell that land at residential rates, make a killing, and away they go, and then it becomes a developer to pay. Now that land is only worth what they say it's worth because it's now zoned residential. It has none of the services there to do it. So whether the central government will pull it together that they maybe have a tax that then gets put into a pool with the council to service that land to make it worth that amount of money. But we've potentially that's the supply and demand. Potentially developers have got ahead of themselves to buy land knowing that they'll be able to sell it for X. And then now with the proposed development contributions doubling that, in a perfect world, what would happen is that developer would just put the extra 20+K on cost of the section, which means the section price has gone up, which means the cost of building's gone up, which is the complete opposite of what we're trying to achieve. So what we're really looking for is just, we understand that there needs to be a contribution for growth. It's what does that figure need to be, and how should that be spent, and how is the best way to spend it? And we believe with, over the years, when I first started doing, like, I'm only 37, but I have been doing this for 19 years. And when I first started, the council and the developers were at loggerheads, but I believe the relationship is really strong there, and there's a lot that could be benefited from both hands and working together. And that's strengthened over the last sort of 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, just because I guess the government didn't. As you said, Minister Bishop made an announcement when me, Helen and I were down at the LGZ conference, but there wasn't a lot of detail. But there's also that sort of like the another announcement around the new RMA Act. Does the RMA cost, is that quite significant for you as developers? If that was streamlined, does that have an effect on that market, on your market price that you can achieve?
It will, yeah. It depends on what the land is and what the use is. It is fairly restrictive. It is set in place to obviously stop bad development and the like, but there'll be a whole lot of metrics that will work together. But constantly within the construction community, we're trying to bring the price down while getting ratcheted with compliance, which we all understand probably from either this forum or in your day jobs. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Hamish. Thanks for your submission and coming today. We appreciate that. And like Colin McFadden said, yes, while we've had an announcement just recently from the government about DCs now becoming levies, it's a bit short on detail yet as to how this is going to work through. And they did talk about an interim 2-year period as well. So yeah, we're well aware of that and we'll take that into consideration.
Thank you, Tom.
Next up, welcome up the developers group. Wayne, you've been got the short straw to speak for the developers. So we've got your submission from the developers group. And so we've read that, so you're welcome to pull out any highlights and then there may be some questions.
Thank you very much. Mine will be a little bit lighthearted. Years ago, a river ran through an area and a wise developer, a businessman, or maybe a woman, saw an opportunity. He thought he could use the power of the water and turn a shaft with a Pelton wheel and mill wheat into flour. With this, there soon became a blacksmith, then a general store. People started arriving, jobs were available, then a saloon, housing, a bank, and a town was born. This all happened because someone took a risk. People today call that person a developer. We, the developers group, support option 2 out of the 2 options. We could look for reasons why we're in this situation. I want to focus on the future, but we must learn from the past. We, the developers group, offer the council that we desire to have regular input into projects. There's a lot of knowledge that developers have here, and we would like to partner with the council on that. From February 24 to February 25, there were 35 sections sold in Fielding. I currently believe, looking at our interim maps, that there's probably 100 sections in Fielding that have resource consent granted. If we continue at today's sales, we've got 30 years of supply. Some of you will remember the 70s when Fielding town shifted from the North End garage to the Kiwitea stream. There was an absolute huge building boom. Then in the 80s, nothing happened. Interest rates were 20%. We had very little construction. And then in the late 2010s, things in development picked up. Interest rates were 3%. Anyone who could get money was better off buying a house rather than renting. The market was red hot. A house would sell as soon as it was listed. That market is well and truly gone. And I personally believe we are back now to something that resembles the 80s. Councils need development. It helps keeps rates more affordable. I believe this year, due to development, rates will be 1 to 1.5% lower than if there was no development. Development is a wonderful word. It provides rates, work, and a future, as well as development contributions. Developers is not such a respected word. Everyone thinks developers have it easy and are greedy. This is simply not the case. It's a risky business, and we have seen council involved in these activities with poor outcomes. Developers need councils. We undertake all the civil works. We give the infrastructure to the council, and then the council has another rating unit forever, but must also maintain those assets. The developer takes all the risk, and we must accept the outcome, good or bad. This is our livelihood. At present, we're seeing a huge reduction in section sale pricing. Just out of interest, a report run yesterday, sections in building 130,000 to 360,000, but probably average 230 to 240,000. Those same sections 3 years ago would have been 320,000. It is with interest that I see Precinct 4 has no back sections. First thing it says to me, twice as many roads, twice the amount of infrastructure to maintain it in the future. And I ask myself, is this wise? We must maintain development fielding. I'm currently aware of 2 developers who are now involved in other towns due to lower or nil development contributions. Development takes a long time. I'll give the councillors an example. The Haronga block, which sits on the corner of Churcher and Root Street. In 1974, that piece of land was purchased for $10,000. 6 months later, a company, GH Weggery out of Levin, come and purchased it for $30,000. Wild Street was being developed up past the high school. Now, 50 years later, we're finally seeing houses there. So in summary, we support option 2 and believe that it is the correct option to adopt. It introduces an element of fairness. Option 2 has the benefit of providing some immediate revenue to service MDC debt with significant revenue under increased development contribution charges, unlikely in the near future. MDC need to involve professional development community and growth decisions, making and utilising skills and experience available. Manawatū District Council should not be involved in development. Development contributions should solely be utilised to fund downstream infrastructure and upgrades required to support actual growth. Please remember, developers have choices as to where they take their commercial activities. Please do not take them away from fielding. And on a lighter note, a great man, Sir Winston Churchill, said, I contend that for a nation to try to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself up by the handle.
Thanks, Wayne. Thank you. It's good to have some humour amongst it all. Let's open it up for questions from the team. Councillor Underwood.
I missed your figures regarding the sections that were sold in Fielding.
35 in the last year, February to February.
And there's 100
No,
Did you say consent?
I believe there's 1,000 that have resource consent or been applied for and fielding.
So 35 in the last year. Thank you.
Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne, and I certainly agree with your figures on and values, etc., and the changes. Going back to your comment about council shouldn't be getting involved in roading on private land, etc. Where you've got a road that needs to go and you need a number of developers to work together, do you genuinely believe that that is achievable?
Yes, I do. All council have to do is have a structure plan, draw on a map to say this will be a future road.
And I perhaps give an example, say precinct 5, where we had a number of landowners down there, and then one gentleman passed away, and we ended up with a family who had a different view to the gentleman who passed away. And that I know that took, you know, a couple of years to work through. I give that as an example of perhaps a situation where it doesn't work, but
I think that was a situation where the council desired to have a heavy traffic bypass. So that was a council-led initiative.
Yes. So if it had been left to the developers, you think that it would have been a smoother process? They would have all got on together?
In that case, no, because the council wanted a bypass. They had a decision why they wanted it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of Wayne? Developers Group? No? Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Right, moving on to welcome Jerry. Jerry from CEDA, CE at Economic Development Agency. Thank you for your submission and look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, everybody. Look, our submission was made on behalf of CETA and is in support of option 2. And it's been really interesting sitting listening to the developer community speaking, which has been really helpful. So look, we are totally focused on what we think might be best to continue to bring investment to the region for development. So we're also mindful, and it was interesting to hear the developers talking about, you know, the competitive market out there for people to take their investment money. And we often hear that, you know, there is other jurisdictions around Central North Island that might be, you know, better positioned to take that investor money on board. So I think the focus of my comment is really around any other comment section, which is around not just the cost of how we do our development levies and contributions, but how we actually take our development community through the journey from first touch to actually getting, you know, a shovel on the ground. So I think it's clear that we need a clear and transparent approach to consent. And by the way, I'm not saying that MDC doesn't do this well. I'm just saying that we need to be doing it very, very well to be ahead of the pack. We need to be a welcoming place for developers and investors to come to do business so that when they come through the door, it's very, very clear what the process looks like and how they go from first touch to actually being able to get their development moving. We want to be best in show, and you know we are the economic development agency for the city as well. And in the last statement of expectation, CEDA's been charged with doing 2 key pieces of work. One is Te Utanganui, which includes Kawakawa and Turner's Road is inside Te Utanganui, and it's a very key part of that development. So we're really, really clear on that. We also are very clear that we need to make sure that that process is seamless. And so that, and I know we've got Ross in the room, and I know Ross is involved from the district's perspective of actually taking people who are interested in coming here to invest and making sure that their ideas and their process is well curated and moved through. I think the other part of it too is, as I read the proposal, it means that the ratepayer will be taking a little bit more of the cost of the development in the district. And I think as part of doing that sell to the ratepayer, they need to have a really clear value proposition around what that actually means, what they're getting. And I think our view on that is that absolutely agree with the council's view that there are upstream social and economic benefits for the wider community, as well as what the developers are getting out of the deal for doing their work in the district. I guess finally, and again, hearing Hamish talk about the minister's announcement last week, there's still a bit of moving sands of what this is going to look like as the government rolls out the new policy directions. But I think the general appetite for this government is that those who benefit from, investment and enabling infrastructure at some level have to contribute to it. And I hear that the development community is happy to do that, but it's just that discussion around what that looks like. So I'm happy to take questions. Our view is that we just want to make sure that the district and the wider Manawatū region is seen as a first choice location developments.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Celia, for getting involved in this process because it's fundamental to the work that you do. Let's open it up. Any questions from the team, please? Councillor Campbell.
Jerry, you noted you worked with both us and the city. Do you, in your view, is us and the city's approach to development consistent, or we've had issues with pricing of contributions between us and the city? What are you hearing from the people that you're working with as to the advantages of developing in either the city or the district?
I have to be careful, but I'm sitting in the right seat. It's fair to say that there are jurisdictions a little bit further south that are starting to get a lot of interest. And I think it's just around making sure that almost doing some kind of analysis of where we sit in terms of not just the cost of how it works, but how that process actually rolls out. And it'd be really, really interesting to do almost a central North Island kind of a spreadsheet of cost, service, support through the process, clarity, etc., so that we come up with a matrix of actually how are we going to position the district, and we have to say the city as well, to actually keep that economic growth going. So we're in the right spot. Yeah.
That's my point. I'm mindful of that we are competing with other regions, and how do we compare? Are our policies at the moment detrimental compared to other regions?
Well, the perception is that's potentially the case, but I think it might be worth considering doing a bit of work to work out whether that's a perception or a reality, and if it is a reality, then work on it. If it's a perception, then change the perception. Yeah.
Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. Jerry, I'm just curious from a broader economic perspective. So option 2 obviously puts some of the burden on general ratepayer, therefore theoretically decreasing their discretionary spend ability. Is there any kind of, do you have a view on, or has there been any analysis of what that might actually do more broadly to the economic situation for the district?
Look, this is not scientific. This is just my gut feel. My suspicion is if we get investment going in the district and we get new high value jobs coming in, and therefore people can have a better choice for what they might do in terms of their employment and other things, that brings investment into the region through household spend. And I think Mayor Helen, we were at a meeting a couple of years ago at Ohaki where we did a back of a cigarette packet calculation. If you had 100 new dwellings in the district filled by families, that's something like $6 million we've calculated into household spend per annum. That lifts the wellness and outcomes socially for everybody. Yeah.
Councillor Corey.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. There's a lot of discussion about development of the Manawatū halting. Are you aware that over just under 50% of the development is in the rural area? The effect of the DC changes, proposed DC changes, will have minimal effect on that development. So you've still got half of the development within the district, close to the city, close to the town, virtually unaffected by these changes. So, everything's not just going to fall over and drop dead, so to speak. Oh, no. Just to make people aware that there is a lot of development taking place and that it will continue.
I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying that in terms of keeping the potential development that's either here or interested engaged, that we are the best place in the Central North Island to do business. That's all. I'm not saying that we're not. I'm just saying that that's important. Yeah.
Councillor Creed.
Thank you, Worship. For some of our communities, for example, if they're on a, sorry, I bet your colleagues are rural water scheme, it's pretty simple. It's the cost of running it divided by the number of participants, right?
Yeah.
Put more participants in, the cost comes down for everybody. What is really difficult for us, I believe, as a council is to really understand what the effect is of the growth or what the benefit is for the current ratepayer, where we sit there and say everybody benefits, but it's really hard for us to substantiate what their benefit is.
Yeah.
In the work that you have done with, say, or your experience with the city or others, do you have any idea as to what sort of effect that would have? Like if the growth went up, say 10%, what then you would realistically expect that the current ratepayers would save in their operation costs? Because we really struggle with that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't answer that question, unfortunately.
Councillor Ford.
Thanks, Jerry. I just want to pick up on the comparison with other local authorities around the, say, Lower North Island, etc. I think it'll be really useful for you and your organisation, CEDA, to critique where we sit. You work for us. We're a shareholder of CEDA. And I suspect that sometimes your organisation is too polite to us, which is lovely. And but I for one would really like to, coming from yourself without a vested interest, you're not a developer, to actually say, well, actually, your risks are here and here. You know, Rangatiki's got it all over you here. Horupanua's doing this really well. These are some things you might like to look at, I think, in relation to this development and DCs.
Really happy to do that. I'll need a little bit of help because my PhD in the training of racehorses doesn't align me for knowing what the development community is looking for or what the council in terms of metrics need to be assayed. But if we can probably talk to Lynn and Hamish and potentially some people behind me, and we can then go and find that information and just put it in a spreadsheet and make some comments and pass it over. Really happy to do that. Fantastic. That sounds like an idea.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any final questions of Jerry? No. Thank you for your submission and for coming today and for taking on a bit of extra work.
Yeah, I don't think I'll come back. Thank you.
Right, moving on. Our last speaker this morning on the DC topic. Welcome to John Key from John Key. Will come up and join us. Thank you for your submission, John, which we have read. And you're welcome to pull out the highlights, speak to it, and then there may be some questions.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, councillors, staff members. Thank you for the opportunity of addressing you this morning. I appreciate from many years of drafting that it is easier to criticise than to draft. So I realise that the local government has been very prescriptive in its requirements for a development contributions policy, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into it, but that won't stop me criticising it. Now, I caught the end of the last speaker, and I assumed that he addressed what the Minister of Housing and the Minister of Infrastructure had just recently been talking about. And this minister seems to be a very excitable chappie. He says, I'm excited to announce the policy decisions that will improve infrastructure funding and financing to get more housing built. And he goes on to say, let's talk about improving infrastructure funding and financing to support urban growth. Under the present status quo, councils and developers face significant challenges to fund and finance enabling structures for housing. And he says, I hope you'll agree with me that existing tools like the development contributions are not fit for purpose. And he goes on to be a little bit more excited again. Today, I'm excited to announce 5 key changes to our infrastructure funding settings that will get more houses built. The first one is replacing DCs with development levy system. And the second is establishing a regulatory oversight of development levies to ensure charges are fair and appropriate. And he talks about, let's start with development levies. Now, to a certain extent, and this has not been taken up by your council, but it's been taken up by other councils, there is a provision for levies already. For example, Tauranga City Council levies in respect of infrastructure concerning roading. And there's a recent legislation covering that, the Development and Infrastructure Financing Act, I think it's called, but I can't quite put my fingers on it at the moment, passed in 2022 from memory. But first of all, I would like to talk about what we are actually consulting about. Now, I'll hand round a sheet of basically legislative provisions, because I'll be going through them. I realise that I need to switch off my camera on that yet. And I'll refer to the items which I've given to you from time to time. But I have to get one back from.
Grants.
Thank you, thanks.
There is one spare.
Thanks, Steph.
The first issue is, and a very important one, is what exactly are we consulting about today? Now, the website and what the information provided would have us believe that we're consulting about option 1 and option 2. But in my respectful submission, and I will detail why I come to this view shortly, option 1 is off the table for consultation because the requirements of the Local Government Act for consultation concerning option 1 have not been met, and as a result, the consultation today regarding option 1 is a legal nullity. That's my submission. Now, if I can go through the provisions of the legislation covering this, and I know it's a wee bit tedious, but factors, development contributions are dictated to by the legislation. First of all, Section 102(4)A of the Local Government Act, and I've given you a copy of Section 102, says that a local authority must consult on a draft policy in a manner that gives effect to the requirements of Section 82 before adopting a policy under this section. Now, Section 102 is concerned with funding and financial policies, and quite clearly in Section 102(2)D, it relates to, includes a policy on development contributions or financial contributions. So your council is governed by Section 102(4)A regarding requirements station. So Section 102(4)A refers us to Section 82, and I've given you a copy of Section 82, and that's numbered 2. And I'll go to Section 82A(2)C, and that says the local authority must, for the purposes of Section 82(1)A and C, make the following publicly available. And C says, if a plan or policy or similar document is proposed to be adopted, details of the proposed changes to the a draft of the proposed plan, policy, or other document. The minutes of the council meeting held on 3 October contain a resolution that the council consults on 2 options, being option 1 and option 2. And that is carried through to the council's website with regard to consultation, where 2 proposed options are put forward for consultation. However, the council's website with regard to the consultation, when it attaches various documents, the only draft of a proposed policy that is included is the draft of the policy for option 2. There is no draft of proposed policy for option 1. So again, as I said before, in my submission, we have got no business today to be talking about option 1. It's not open for consultation. If the council had put forward a draft policy containing option 1, that would be fine. So I'm going to confine my submissions to option 2. Option 1, in my view, is off the table. Now, I'm not going to harp on about this, but we have to realize what the financial impact of option 2 is. The present policy which the council has came into force just 15 months before the meeting of 3 October 2024. 15 months before the previous policy was passed by resolution to the new policy was put forward in the council meeting. 15 months. And over that period, under option 2, there's a 44% increase in the building urban area and 37% increase in VCs in the building intensification area. That rate of inflation really perhaps challenges some of the rates of inflation in some of the banana republics in Africa. So I'd suggest that councillors keep in mind the financial impact of the increase in the over that very short period in the development contributions proposed under option 2. Now, in my written submission, I raised whether the presentation given to your council on 4 July may have misled council as to the funding of growth infrastructure. And that was labelled Development Contributions 101. And that presentation included the following statement. The key purpose of the development contributions policy is to ensure that growth and the cost of infrastructure to meet that growth is funded by those who cause the need for that infrastructure. Now, the words is funded by those who cause the need for that infrastructure were underlined. Now, so that's what was given to your council in that meeting. If I can just turn to what the heavy councils, the big councils say about development contributions. And we go first of all to item 3. There's an extract from the Auckland Council website on development contributions. You go down about 3/4 of the first page, it says about their development contributions policy. It aims to make sure that the cost of new infrastructure is fairly shared between developers and ratepayers based on who? 1, causes the need for the infrastructure. 2, benefits from the infrastructure. Without development contributions, ratepayers would have to cover all the costs of providing growth-related infrastructure. So that represents a marked difference in what was presented to your council, labelled Development Contributions 101 at a meeting held in July. So that's the Auckland Council. Moving down the country, down to the Wellington Council. And that's item or paper 4. Is the council's development contributions policy helps ensure that a fair, equitable, and proportionate share of new or expanded infrastructure required for growth is funded directly by development. Not talking about 100%, we're talking about a fair, equitable, and proportionate share. Having said that, it may possibly be 100% in certain cases. Moving further down the countryside, going to Christchurch. And this is item 5. Charging development of financial contributions enables the council to recover a fair, equitable, and proportionate share of the cost of the capital investment needed to sustainably service growth development from those who cause and or benefit from that investment. And the last item is item 6. And down the bottom, it gives the purpose of development contributions. The purpose of development contributions is to enable the DCC, the Dunedin City Council, to recover from those persons undertaking development a fair, equitable, and proportionate portion of the cost of capital expenditure necessary to service growth. So that is what the 4 heavy councils say about development contributions. They don't say it's the key purpose is funded is to ensure that it's growth is funded by those who cause the need for that infrastructure. The whole matter of development contributions is governed by the Local Government Act. But what does the Local Government Act say? And if you go to item 7, it gives you section 197AA. The purpose of the development contributions provisions in this act is to enable territorial authorities to recover from those persons undertaking development a fair, equitable, and proportionate portion of the total cost of capital expenditure necessary to service growth over the long term. Next item is item 8, and I refer to section 197AB1C. Says that, go back to 6, beginning of it, all persons exercising duties and functions under this subpart must take into account the following principles when preparing a development contribution policy under section 106 or requiring development contributions under section 198. And it is cost allocations used to establish development contributions should be determined according to and be proportional to the persons who will benefit from the assets to be provided, including the community as a whole, as well as those who create the need for those assets. Now, the leading case in development contributions is a case of Neil Housing and North Shore City Council, a decision of the High Court of Mrs. Justice Potter. And I've given you in item 9 a synopsis of the important matters that Justice Potter concluded on with regard to development contributions, and I'll come to that in a minute. But she said at paragraph 48, which I haven't got there, but which I've read through now, in referring to the Local Government Act, she says that the Act provides expressly for local services, local authorities to require and impose development contributions. But a development contributions policy and the processes in relation to it must comply strictly with development provisions of the Act, which is the sole source of a council's power to exact development contributions. Now, in her decision, she said in paragraph 290, the council has made an error in adopting a narrow concept of economic efficiency in the causative approach it has applied to the assessment of development contributions and excluding appropriate consideration of the distribution of benefits and equitable and proportionate allocation. What you've been told in that meeting under what was called Development Contributions 101 is a purely causative analysis of how development contributions are to be funded. It had no reference to benefits. It's exactly what had happened in the North Shore case, and it was struck down by Justice Potter as being contrary to law. Over the page, paragraph 220, he says, resolution of the economic efficiency causation versus benefits debate is reached by a proper interpretation and application of the relevant provisions in the Act. The causative approach adopted by the Council, which is what you've got in Development Contributions 101, the causative approach adopted by the Council has excluded appropriate consideration of and allowance for distribution of benefits between community as a whole. Is inconsistent with the Council's obligations under the Act. The Council has accordingly erred in law. When you look at that, and you look at what you were given in Development Contributions 101, you've been told, focus only, chaps, on the causative approach. Justice Potter says, if you do that, you're erring in law. She goes on, clause 20, paragraph 279, to say, the Council is required by section 77 to assess the benefits and costs of identified reasonably practical options in terms of the present and future social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of the district. It is required by section 101(3) to consider community outcomes, the distribution of benefits, the intergenerational principle, the exacerbator pays principle, that's the causative approach, and again, costs and benefits and the overall impact of any allocation of liability for revenue needs on the current and future social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of the community. A purely causative or exacerbator approach is obviously incorrect in law. Now, go back to the first page of item 9 and in paragraph 113. Justice Potter sets out the line of inquiry that the council should go through when considering whether a development contribution may be required. And she says, I consider that the relevant provisions of the Act interrelate to require of councils the following step process a line of inquiry when consider whether a development contribution or development contributions may be required. Now, the first one is this. Is the subdivision or development a development that generates a demand for reserves or infrastructure? Now, she got that directly from section 197, which I've given you in item 8. Now, if you have a look at, you don't have to turn it up now, but if I just refer it to it. Paragraph 27 of your proposed policy does not include that step. Is a subdivision or development that there's no inquiry as to that step. It follows the other steps, but not that first step. So, in my view, the legislation has not been followed in clause 27 of your proposed policy, because there's no inquiry as to whether this is development that generates a demand for reserves or infrastructure. Justice Potter, in that regard, says in her decision at paragraph 120, I conclude that the Act requires that before a development contribution may be required by the Council, there must be a development and a direct causal connection or direct causal nexus, between development and the demand for infrastructure it either alone or jointly with another development generates. This necessarily requires the Council to determine as a preliminary point on a case-by-case basis whether a particular project is development as defined in section 197. The Council has erred in law in failing to ensure its development contributions policy complies with these statutory requirements. So, in my view, and I'm not being absolutely definite about, but in my view, clause 27 does not include that first step required by Justice Potter. And if I'm correct in that, then the Council would be erring in law by not including that provision. Now, if I can go now to item paper 10, which if I can direct it to section 1013B, which requires that the Council's funding needs must be met from those sources that the local authority determines to be appropriate, following consideration of item B, the overall impact of any allocation of liability for revenue needs on the current and future social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of the community. So the Council's got to look at the overall impact of any allocation of liability for revenue needs on the current and future social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of the community. Now, if you go to paragraph 117 of the proposed policy, and that refers to, at the top, overall impact of liability on the community, section 1013B. The community there, just the development community. And that's not what the law says. It talks about the well-being of the community, not just the development community. I'll read it. The Council has also considered the impact of the overall allocation of liability on the community. In this case, the liability for revenue falls directly within the development community. The Council considers that whilst the level of development and financial contributions are significant for the development community, the provision of adequate infrastructure support growth benefits the social, economic and cultural well-being of this section of the community. There is no confinement in section 101 to the development community. It refers to the community. By isolating on the effect on the development community in clause 101, in my submission, council has failed to comply with the obligation thrust upon it under section 101 to consider the overall impact on the well-being of the community. Now, even if you take a narrow view of what the community is, there's an impact on homeowners. Now, you go to item 11, which is a paper from the Treasury to the Cabinet, and 23.3 says, homeowners face higher upfront costs when purchasing a new home as the lump sum nature of the DC means that it is added to the cost of a section. While the nominal incidence is on the person developing the section, the economic incident is borne by the purchaser owner of the new home. So even if you take a restrictive view of what the community is, which is contrary to law anyhow, but even if you take a restrictive view, the community that's impacted by it is not only the developers, but by the end user, similar to President Trump placing tariffs. It's the consumer that ultimately pays. Now, if you can just skip to item 13, and this is an interesting one. This is the initial proposed development of financial policy for 2024. And you go to clause 116, which is replicated in the policy that we are dealing with today in clause 117. But there is one interesting addition in clause 116. And it refers in the third line, the council considers that the level of development and financial contributions are affordable. Now, it's interesting to note that somehow the words are affordable and the policy that was presented to your council initially when you were getting 104% increase, which was labelled by policy as being affordable, the words affordable have somehow been excised from the policy that we're dealing with today. So I assume from that some person has decided that it's probably best not to have the words affordable there because that might raise some issues. If you have a look, so the words are in the policy that was presented to council when this is the option 1 policy. The council considers that the level of development and financial contributions are affordable, and that becomes in a new policy. The council considers that whilst the level of development and financial contributions are significant for the development contribution for the development community. It'd be interesting to know why the words affordable were deleted. Obviously, someone thinks they're no longer affordable.
So John, I'm conscious that we've only got a couple of minutes left. So whether you want to use that with more highlights or whether you want to leave time for some questions.
Well, there's a lot of things that I would like to cover, but perhaps I'll just very briefly isolate some items. If you go to page 56 of the policy, there are parks and reserves growth 100% to be funded by development contributions. Unfortunately, what is involved with the items is not disclosed, but Kovai Park growth projects 100% funded by development contributions. If that's the addition of swings or new seating, does that mean that myself, as a person who's not involved in as a developer or end using of developer, is not entitled to use those swings because I don't benefit from it? And if I did benefit from it, then there would be a reduction in 100%. What I'm saying is this: these projects here in the reserves, in my submission, though I don't know the full detail of it, would have a community benefit aspect of it. And if they do, the 100% funding is contrary to law. And I refer to the relevant provisions of the statute I've been quoting from and Justice Potter's decision. Now, if I can end before questions with referring to what the Mayor of Hamilton has said about development contributions. This is in item 12. He said it was important that council found the right balance between supporting the development community to build much needed homes, commercial and industrial space that our city so desperately needs, while minimizing the effect on ratepayers. The last thing we need for our city right now is developers leaving or holding back on very important housing or commercial developments. But outside of this DC policy, we need to get creative and find new ways to fund growth, including partnering with government and the private sector and embracing new funding and financing tools if we're ever going to see better outcomes for our growing community. That is why I'm proposing working more closely with the development community. Now, I won't go into it, but the council doesn't seem to have addressed the issues of what other funding sources are available. This is going to cost so much. How much can we stick it on the developers and put it forward? Now, unfortunately, I haven't got time to go through my other submissions, which unfortunately I thought were reasonably relevant, but are there any questions?
Thanks, John. Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Thank you, John, for your thorough submission. Plenty for us to think about. My question is, would you accept that after the July 24 presentation to council, and you talked about 101, etc., that actually council has pushed back and said, no, we want to look at some other options. And in fact, we were given 16 other options to consider, which were whittled down to what actually became option 2, which I think complies with what Justice Potter is instructing, and that option 2 does take into account community benefit, which is why we have that option 2. So I'm really asking, don't you agree that we've already covered that, and given that we're not in terms of this submission, we're not considering option 1 anyway?
No.
And the reason?
The reason is, for example, the reserves. They have to be 100% funded by the developers' contributions. If you go through, these are a number of existing reserves, more of it's going to be done there. Isn't that, Mr. Ford, won't that benefit the community as a whole rather than the developers and the people of the end users of the development? If the council puts seats there, for example, and that's part of the development contributions, am I going to be excluded because I didn't, well, was not a developer, or nor was I an end user of a development? Is it going to be a sign saying these are only to be used by people who have recently purchased in this development?
Okay, I'm not allowed to answer questions at this
You
hearing.
ask
What I'm going to say is that, thank you for that, because these are the things that we'll be asking, we'll be picking up on, discussing, and actually asking for further a comment on from our staff, the issues that you've raised. So thank you for that.
And
Thank you.
you did raise an interesting matter with regard to option 2. And this has really got me quite concerned. It said, under this option, the renewals would be paid by ratepayers. Well, that is axiomatic. Renewals are to be paid by ratepayers. That's not anything dramatic. Increased level of services be paid by ratepayers. Of course, it's going to be paid by ratepayers. If it was going to be paid by developers, you'd be ending up in a High Court action. So I don't see quite what option 2 is showing us dramatically over option 1.
I've certainly seen some advice from Simpson Grierson that covers what you're talking about, but it's not my position to sit here today and try and explain it off the top of my head.
Thank you. Any final questions of John? No. Thank you. You've covered a number of points. Thank you for the papers that you've left to help back up what you've raised. And like sort of been said, that will be taken into consideration with our deliberations and responded to you in due course. So thank you for your time and for the submission.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Right, so that brings us to the end of our submitters. Thank you to the development community and all those who've taken the time to participate today. So next we have deliberations. There'll be elected members are asked to send in any queries, areas that they want more information on, in particular to the questions that have been raised in our submitters. They will go to our deliberation session, and then from there, council will work through its decision. So thank you. Right, so we will move on our agenda. We're moving to page 62, and this is 10.3, Statement of Expectations, Council Control Organisations. And as you will recall, we've done some work on what the outcomes are that council require of our council controlled organisations, and we've been working those through, and today it's looking to see if we can approve those. So welcome Lynn and Ross.
Oh, no.
No, Ross will go. Okay, you're on your own. Okay. Doing the workshop and helpful us.
So as worship said, that's this our time of the year where we're looking at our statement of expectations for our CCOs, and we, as you will recall, we don't have to produce a statement of expectation for CEDA because we decided last year with our other shareholder comes to North City Council that we would do that every 3 years, although CEDA will be providing us with a draft statement of intent that we can shortly. So the three that we've got up in front of us, as you know, Arahuri Forest, Kitchener Park Trust, Fielding Civic Centre, and Manawatū Community Trust. And I understand that these were workshop elected members. There is no surprises, and for each of those CCOs, they are aware of what the statement of expectations contain. And so, you know, we can go through each of the statement of expectations, although I'm sure that you are all well and truly across those from following the workshop. And or we could go straight to the recommendations. I'll just take your direction on that.
Thank you. Probably more, is there anything that you want to highlight between on the changes that have been made after you got feedback from the council control organisations?
Yes, I can do that. For the, perhaps if we took Arahuri Forest first. As you know, the key change in that statement of expectation is around some slight changes to how council and Arahuri Forest will manage the educational opportunities. That's a change to what was in the last statement of expectation. And that is the key change in this statement of expectation for Arahuri Forest. And they are, you know, that was actually initiated by them. That's the key one for that. It doesn't.
Councillor Belstead.
Yeah, I noticed that make the forest park available for educational opportunities to increase awareness and extended knowledge. I haven't been there a while, but when I was there the last time, there were a few trees named, but from an educational point of view, I know the Ashurst Recreational Reserve that used to go down, it's quite a big reserve. They had a track through it, and then they had a A4 sheet when you entered it, and you had sort of all the names of the trees on it, and you had to find them. But I think 2004, 2018 or whatever, cyclone took away a lot of it. So when I was there last, it was a mess. So is there, you know, naming the trees or the ferns is extremely good for the young, for all of us to go through and see what that tree is or whatever. So would that be extended? Would those naming of the trees be extended in the park, you think?
What will happen is that Arahuri Forest will respond back to us with their statement of intent, and they will describe how they will make the park available for educational opportunities. And, you know, I'm aware of some of the initiatives that they're considering, like QR codes, etc., for some of the trees, etc.
I know there's an app you can get, which is amazing, that you can get, that you just take a photo of the leaves and it will instantly tell you the tree. So, yeah, so thanks for that.
Thank you. Anything further on Kitchener Park? No?
So for the Fielding Civic Centre, we will have that one next. So there were, as you're aware, the Fielding Civic Centre, this is the first time that they will have had a statement of expectations where Arahuri Forest statement of expectations was approved last year. And so these are in effect new. These have been worked through with the Fielding Civic Centre Trust following the signing of the trust deed and the slight changes that have been made in the trust deed. So there's only 4 statement of expectations, and they are, as you can see in front of them, mainly about utilising the facility to its capacity, working to encourage more participation of performing arts and recreational activity in the facility, and working optimally to ensure good financial outcome for the centre. And finally, working with council on developing an investment schedule for the facility over the coming 10-year period. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions in relation to the Civic Centre Trust? No? Community Trust.
So the Community Trust, we have, the Community Trust has long provided statement of intent to council, but council's actually never defined its statement of expectations to the Manawatū Community Trust. So as you know, we have worked with the trust to actually define what council's expectations would be of them. And these align to the statement of intent that they have always reported to council over the last few years. So they look at ensuring that there's affordable housing stock for seniors and disabled, which is part of their core business, contribute to the community health and wellbeing of the district by maintaining existing housing stock, and to ensure that they're accessible, compliant, etc. And they report on that to us, and contribute to community health and wellbeing by increasing the number of affordable housing units. And that's something, that they've come and presented to us on before and talked about their growth program that they have, and then providing good governance principles and sound financial performance for the trust, which I think that we could all say that they do quite successfully. So they are the four statement of expectations. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Underwood.
Thank you. With the first one, the accompanying comment, I can't see the connection with that first expectation.
That is one of the things that when we worked through this with the trust, is that part of how they report to council is working with other third parties like, I don't know, Manawatū, Tenants Association and etc. And through that, they find out, what the need is for housing stock, and then also where there's opportunities to get funding in order to help support the district with affordable housing. So they, as you know, when they do their reporting to council, and this is just they don't have to follow this comment that we've got, but this is from working with them. They actually do the engagement on behalf of council, if you like, by going out and looking at where there is potential opportunities for them, to grow affording.
I think it was just the funding opportunities put me off a little bit with the fact that you were trying to identify demand.
Yeah.
It didn't gel in my mind.
Okay.
But you're saying there are agencies that they will approach, like the health centre perhaps, and the tenancy people and disability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they report back to us as part of their report. So they'll continue to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, thanks for that, Lynn. Are there any other further questions or comments before we go to the recommendations on page 62? Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. Lynn, I was just wondering on the Civic Centre Trust, whether there needs to be anything in there on the relationship with the Jand Sheldon consultants and working with them. Is there anything that needs to go in there, or are you comfortable that it's kind of working okay at the moment?
Yes, council, that's kind of part of the intent of the fourth statement of expectation for them, is working with council and whoever council's contracted providers are of what Dan Sheldon is one, Sylvester Clark at the moment is another one, to develop that facility investment.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, we have three recommendations on page 62. If I could have a move it, second, please. Councillor Shaw.
Okay. The council elects to one, approve the Albury Forest Kitchen Trust Statement of Expectations for the 2025 to 2026 year. And two, approve the Fielding Civic Centre Trust Statement of Expectations for the 2025 to 2026 year. And three, approve the Manawatū Community Trust. That should be, that is. Yeah. Statement of Expectations for the 2025 to 2026 year.
Noting the correction and recommendation number 3 to the Community Trust. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Blackmore, any further discussion? Put the motions, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried.
I'd just like to say thank you to for the support from elected members. I'm working with the council controlled organisations to meet this.
Thanks, Lynn. So the next step is they come back to us with their statement of intent, correct?
The draft, and council then has not an opportunity to make comment on that.
And are we looking to, like we're talking about with Cedar, to turn these into 3 yearly or extended beyond a year? Because it's kind of like, you know, it takes so long to go through this process that you finally get one signed off and you're back to talking about statement of expectation again.
Absolutely. So I think probably our approach will be that we'll do this for a couple of years and get the cadence in place. And then once we've got the cadence right, then we'll look at extending it out like we've done for Cedar.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
We're on to item 10.4 and we're on page 80. And this is in regards to the traffic bylaw update. And this is to adopt the changes that we recently agreed to the parking limits in the town centre. Welcome to you both, David and Francis. Hand it over to you.
Your Worship, morning everyone. After listening to the DC submissions, I'm glad to be presenting on the less controversial subject of parking time limits. This paper, it's quite a bureaucratic paper in a way. Back in on the 19th of December, Council agreed some amendments to the parking time limits in Fielding's town centre. What this paper does is it asks for Council to accept changes to the parking, stopping and vehicle and class control register. So what that does is it pretty much means we can start to enforce the time limits within the town centre. I think on page 64 we have a map which shows the amended parking time limits, and I'm pretty sure Steph sent through the actual pages of the register that have been changed compared to approved last year. So, yeah, that's a pretty big thing.
Thank you. I went to the park in the square yesterday and outside Paper Plus, and I went, whoops, new signs, and the sign said 30 minutes. And I'm going, is that meant to be right? That's not what we discussed, is it? And it's not mentioned there in the changes that we agreed to.
So we agree, is that Manchester Street?
In Manchester Square.
Yeah, so we did, Council did agree to addition of 30-minute parking zone.
This is outside the Beresford Bakery, the Paper Plus is on the other side.
Usually on that side of the street and longer on the opposite
So
side.
I'm just suggesting someone might want to check that we've got the right sign in the right place, because it said 30 minutes outside Paper Plus, which made me move on.
It's on the map, and it might be for the bank.
Yeah, that's what the bank.
Yeah.
If you parked on the other side, you would have been fine. You need the map.
The ATM machine.
Yeah, but all of those parts along there are now 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, any questions, comments in relation to this? We have gone through it a number of times. Councillor Shaw.
It's much about, so when will we start enforcing this?
So we were due to start enforcing yesterday, but obviously, given this change, that wouldn't be sensible because then after this change. So as soon as the signs need to be green. So the team, the infrastructure team are changing the signs as soon as possible. Assuming that council approves this change today. And then as soon as that has occurred, we will start to.
Could you let us know when it does, when it's due to, because it's something that members of the public ask us quite often. Yes. The enforcement officer started there.
Yep. And the team that's at the market tomorrow talking about that as well.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry to go back harping to my 30 minutes outside along the BNZ, but where is that? When you look at 3.1, it outlines what we've agreed for the following amendments. Where does that change to 30 minutes along there? But I can't see where that fits under what we agreed to change.
If I may, Your Worship, that one was not a change. It was in the original as a little yellow bit here. And so it's not a change. It's been transferred into the new one.
There are several of them, Your Worship, around that, like ATM machines, you know, the quick get in, quick get out. Yes.
Okay. Right, any further questions, discussion? Otherwise, we can go straight to the recommendation, page 80. Councillor.
I move that the council accepts changes to the parking, stopping and vehicle and class controlled register, version 2025.1, under part 2, section 9, clause 9.1a. Who do I sound like? Of the traffic safety and road use bylaw 2023, enabling changes to parking time limits previously agreed by resolution NDC 22nd of it 23-25 974 during the council meeting of 19 December 2024.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McFadden. Any further discussion? None. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Yay. Let the fun begin. Right, we're up to page 85, 10.5. This is seeking approval to sign off our consultation document for local water done well, so that we can go out for consultation. And the revised version following legal review was sent to us last night. Those have had a chance to look at it. There's been some discussion about changing the front cover, changing the photos to make it relevant so that we're identifying, we are talking about drinking waste and storm water, not rivers. So that's been taken on board and Lindsay's team's working on that. So I'll hand it over to you both, Hamish and Lindsay, and maybe just highlight that there was, as part of the legal review, some suggested changes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so just through that process, we got the legal review back yesterday lunchtime. Hence the sort of the compressed timeframe to get the final document completed and out to elected members late yesterday. So the key sort of feedback they had was around the debt component, which focused very deliberately focused on the price in terms of what the household must pay. what the legal review essentially suggested is that we were probably a bit light in terms of the debt position of council and what that would mean by way of a CCO option. So you'll see in the back of the document, second to last page, page 13, making sense of the financial implications and joining with others. The last two paragraphs there talk quite specifically about that the council Three Waters debt as a portion of total debt. The note that this would be transferred to the to the established CCO that we might that might be an option if we were proposing that. And we thought it was relevant to point out the advantage of that in terms of what it means for council, but also a bit of a rider that goes with that be careful what you wish for, because freeing up a lot of debt headroom means there's a potential lot of additional borrowing, and it's the same household that's going to be paying that cost. So the feedback, we've tried to incorporate it throughout the document, and it's probably quite subtle changes where we were very much focused on council's preferred option, and council's been quite clear on that. We probably didn't emphasise the, I guess you call them the benefits of the CCO as other councils who are putting the CCO forward as their preferred option may have done. So we've tried to subtly incorporate some of those benefits, but I guess the decision that Lindsay and I sort of got to as we were putting that in is that council's very deliberately chosen its preferred option because of the benefits of that. And by contrast, there aren't a lot of benefits that we've discussed in terms of that CCO model, whilst I'd say focusing very much on the financial aspects of it. So the final document has picked up those legal review components, and also the elected members who have given us their points from when the draft document was tabled before 2 weeks ago. So hopefully there's no further tweaks and changes other than those that have just been announced this morning. If I just refer you to the council report, it is very much a summary report to adopt the consultation document. Very deliberately maintained the story that we've kept through previous council reports in terms of the local water done well journey that we've been on. So sort of picking up the key dates and decisions we've made. There will be, I'm sure, a number of ratepayers that will go to not just our consultation document and the links to, for example, the Morrison Low report, but they'll also go back and look at previous council resolutions, previous reports and council reports that have been discussed. So very deliberately tried to keep that information succinct and consistent all the way through. So you'll see there's only the one recommendation at the bottom of the page 85 of your agenda, which is to adopt as per attachment 1, and goes without saying that attachment 1 is the updated document that was circulated yesterday. Whether we need a second recommendation in there, your worship, around as amended to pick up the formatting visual aspects that you've noted and requested. I think it's probably prudent from a process point of view to have a second recommendation to do exactly that. And then the two notes that are in there which outline the intended consultation period and the fact that we're looking to have our deliberations 28th, 29th, 30th of April if we need the 3 days, and then make a final decision on this on the 15th of May at the council meeting. So those are there as notes. And like I say, if we want to add that in, Ash, thank you.
Can you just check the wording?
Yeah, I'm suggesting that we change the title and picture on the front cover. It's been what's been coming from a few councillors to get consistency of what we're talking about. Oh, you've got that there under there, yeah. Okay.
That's that. So does that reflect your wishes? We can amend it now if we want to be specific on that.
No, I see it. It's covered under the second.
Okay. Yep.
Councillor Shaw.
Do you think, considering the importance of this consultation, that 1 month is enough?
We, through your worship, we've been working through a collaborative process with the other 4 councils that are in our patch, if you like. So we've very deliberately tried to align all of our timetables for adoption of the consultation document, the consultation period, and then the adoption of the final outcome. So two parts to your answer. One, yes, I think a month is sufficient. And B, it has been aligned with 3 other councils to try and ensure that we're on the same page and communicating with our communities at the same time.
Just before I go to Councillor Ford, and you talked about aligning with the other councils. And I question that because I've been hearing the ads for Palmerston and City Council's consultation. And I go, interesting direction that they've taken in that their preferred option is to work with the neighbours as a regional model, regardless of the fact that some of those councils have already said no to that option. So my question was, we had originally talked about aligning our consultation documents so that we were sending the same messages. Did that follow through, or have we ended up sort of going our own ways?
We've Comms can jump in on this one. We've aligned the time frame. Tony have probably got slightly ahead in terms of the adoption and the public engagement around that. The actual consultation document that was prepared, I think the initial thinking across the 4 councils was that when that was done, there would be a broader alignment in there. As we've gone through the information and council specific and noting that there are different preferred options across there, it became a bit challenging to have a consistent approach with that. And I envisage that all councils will get submissions pointing at exactly that. One council's looking for one outcome, and yet their neighbouring councils get a different preferred option, which is different to that. So I can see there being ratepayers and interested parties that will submit on multiple councils and ask exactly that question, which I think is really relevant.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I'm also wondering if it just causes confusion amongst the community as well.
Yeah.
Especially when we've already officially gone out and said no to the full regional option, and you've got the city saying that's the preferred option.
True. We have actually said no, we've said third option.
So, no means no. So,
yeah, we've covered through our consultation document. We've said no to the full regional 7 council option, and we've said no to the single council option. So we've agreed our preferred option is the status quo, with some tweaks. And we've also included the 2 and the 4 council option for that. So like we can control what's in our control.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be useful to test that through the submission period.
Thank you, Councillor Ford.
2 things. One is I've already received a reasonable amount of feedback from Manawatū district residents who have seen the Palmerston North document, who think that we've already rolled over and agreed to the 4 council, 2 council model, which clearly when we go out, the sooner the better. That'll come right, I guess, but it has caused confusion, and so it's a very confusing topic, full stop. And I think I know we don't see eye to eye on the approach, but it is a shame that we didn't all go out on the same day. I think that's just a disappointment. Going back to the most recent tweaks as from the legal review, you've covered I think page 13, the bit about debt. Is there anything else that's changed that isn't marked in yellow highlighter? I haven't been through the 2 documents looking for each, so I was hoping that you would point out what the changes might be.
So the other changes I would suggest were not material. The specific conversation around the debt and the implications of that debt were, from a legal review perspective, they were aligning with the legislative requirements around consultation. The rest of it was just making sure that it was clear and that what we intended was what was said. We added some additional wording in there around the single council CCO, which wasn't there previously, or we enhanced that. So like I say, and then there were a number of other suggestions that were made through the legal review that we haven't taken on board because it was very much the formatting and the like. So I don't have a version A, version B with the yellow highlighter, but the substantive changes are in, and the tweaks in terms of clarity have also been made throughout, but they're not significant.
And I think that.
So you just don't trust me. trust funds, that would make a right.
I think the clarification around CCO is really good, and that includes the diagram on page 4. That now makes sense because it's got a title that tells you what it means.
Yeah.
So, and it applies talking about a 2 or a 4 council model, so that's good. Yep. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Do we have any indication from either Kapiti or Horowhenua what their preferred options are in terms of, I mean, I'm having a look on the Kapiti website now, but I can't see anything, but.
Yeah, so Kapiti they have confirmed that their preferred option is a standalone status quo as well. Horowhenua had initially resolved that their preferred option was a 2 council model between Horowhenua and Kapiti. I honestly don't know where they're sitting in terms of their formal council resolution, but certainly at an office of discussion, CE level office of discussion, they were looking at that 4 council option as being.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Worship. I understand we can't include everything, but my understanding is that the DIA has not as yet really dealt with the rural water schemes, and a big part of our community on rural water schemes. I guess is what I'm saying is, I think we just need an update just between us as to where that sits, because people will ask us.
Right, in terms of the DIA's approach.
Yeah, like in other words, that they're saying, what about the rural water scheme? We just need to be able to say to them, look, DIA has not whatever, so because it's not covered in the document.
We come bring it back to council for information.
It does raise a good point though, because at the first feedback that we were asked to give, it was suggested that reference be made to a particular statement about that rural water schemes were being dealt with separately.
Yeah, and that's what I asked for this morning.
And is that in here? I didn't actually see it when I skimmed through it last night.
There is a specific reference to urban and rural water, which I'm just trying to find, but we did specifically put that reference to rural water schemes in terms of the status quo.
No, that's fine, as long as I missed it, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So if it's in there, then fine.
Yeah, it's a good point, and we did raise it.
Yep. So the preferred option that we're looking to consult on is that continuation of the status quo for both urban and rural.
I can get that, but I guess what I'm saying is that it doesn't deal with the fact that what would happen on the CC, the CCO. Like, if it's a preferred option, of course, it's status quo, accepted.
Yeah.
But but we don't mention that when we go to the other options. Now, that's okay, we can just talk to that, but it will raise its head, that's okay.
It's on page 10 when we talk about the status quo changes in more detail.
Yeah.
So we can refer to urban and rural water schemes.
Yeah, I guess, but I get Councillor McFadden saying rural water. Some of our villages are rural and they have water. They have water services, but then there is rural, which have water schemes, which the government has not dealt with. Councillor Hadfield.
Well, should we just say there in that opening paragraph, the district's urban and rural water services and schemes?
Well, I think
that simple.
I think the point that we're trying to make to our community is that rural water schemes, how they are going to be managed, has not been decided on by government.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking for, is to put in there that it has not been.
It's still being worked on by central government.
So on page 12, perhaps we're.
Taking on board your point that status quo, it's not an issue.
Yeah. Excuse me, Council Whitmore's point, we could look at a bullet point in the option 2, option 3 similar outcome, and we've made some specific references in there. We could put a statement there around the future decision around rural schemes through DIA.
Thank you.
Councillor Short.
I think that is important because even though we know that's the case today, if when they do make a decision, it does change dramatically out of our hands, the community will come back and say, well, where did you tell us that might happen?
Yeah.
I think it needs to be before the two options, it needs to be as part of the overall discussion at the beginning of the document, where we're talking about terms of reference for instance.
Well, if
Yeah,
let's
bullet
start
point
with
three.
crowd by page 11, I think it's right up front.
Yeah.
Page
and then-
2.
Yeah. Councillor Campbell.
I agree with that line of thought, because looking beyond this, all we're doing here is asking for consultation on what our opinion is, but at the end of the day, how's this finally going to be resolved, and what, input, or, how's it going to turn out? Are we going to be told at the end of the day by the Minister of Government or legally or somebody, this is what you're doing, despite what the outcome of consultation is? So, that I see could well happen, because if Kapiti and Orofnua and us decide to go alone and leave Palmerston out on a limb, and they go bleating to the Minister of Local Government,
Already have.
which they, along with other councils, we could well be overridden in our preferred option. So I think that probably should be in there.
We have tried to address that. Communities for Local Democracy have met, had a couple of meetings. We have written to the Minister outlining, remember that you made the decision around repealing the mandated version, and your version was about giving communities and council choice. And we also referred to the fact that given that we're hearing there are a number of councils looking to go with the status quo, that we're just raising it with government, that reminding them that they allowed us to have choice, and that there will be consequences if they come out and say, and C4LD have already said we would come back together and object to that.
You wish it a vote.
Oh, no, a different topic, so you carry on.
Yeah, no, just I think those are all very valid concerns, and those are things that are in front of us. In terms of the resolution for today and this document, this is the point that we're at in that process. If those decisions come in months down the track after the cards have all fallen, we will need to deal with that, and we'll need to keep our community updated ourselves, plus whatever's coming through from DIA. But at this point in the process, the timeframe we're working to, I don't think any of that speculation, if you like, is relevant to any of the actual CD.
And I think it's worth repeating what our CE has said to us a number of times, that part of the reason that we have explored and funded legal reviews and consultancies on options is that if these decisions about in-house get challenged, we have all the documentation and all the work that's been done to basically say we've done the work, show us how it's affordable, it's the best option for our community. And so I think we've done all the homework that we need to do to back up the decision, the preferred option. Councillor Black.
Thank you. I just wanted to check in on the accuracy of a statement on page 2. It's in the opening paragraph. And it is about most important decision and can't be reversed. So I would understand entering into a CCO, it's probably pretty hard to back out. But if we went with option 1, things changed in the future and it would be more beneficial to be part of a CCO, can we actually change our mind?
So my understanding of the legislation at the moment is we've got a tight timeframe to prepare our water service delivery plan. That's got to be with the DIA by the 6th of September. So all of this work around public consultation around preferred option is to meet that legislative requirement. If the rules change or the DIA changes guidance or the law down the track, then that may well open the door for changes that are not currently foreseen. So you could argue that it can't be reversed, without a change of government direction. But under the way that we're going through it now and the timeframe we're working to, once we've made a decision, completed our water service delivery plan, submitted it to DIA for approval, that's kind of done, if you like. And they've been very clear that it's a one-off document.
Yeah, I kind of wonder whether those and can't be reversed is actually necessary, because I think that would set certain expectations in the community's mind, and they're not going to care where the decision's coming from or change in legislation, and suddenly we're doing something different. It looks a certain way. So I just wonder whether we don't actually need that and can't be reversed.
I guess, yeah.
If that's the general view of council, we can.
My general view, I think it really makes the point. It makes the point that if this is, you need to make a decision, you need to give us the feedback.
Yeah, you can look at it two ways, can't you?
Yeah.
About the importance of participating. Councillor McLeish.
Yeah, sorry, since I raised the point about the rural, link to the rural water schemes, in the interest of moving on, I'm happy with that addition up there.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Ford.
Largely a question for councillor McFadden, who has very superior knowledge of rural water schemes. Should it not have something like, it is not yet known how they will be treated if the council adopts a CCO for Three Waters delivery?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, may I answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise recommendation. Councillor Ford. I would support that.
So the central government have not made a decision yet on how rural water schemes will be managed under the local water done well reform.
So Ash, can you pick up those words? It is not yet known how rural water schemes will be managed.
If status quo is not adopted.
Within
Well, no, they may still make some changes that we have to change.
Sure.
I think that including there reflects councillor Ford and I think councillor McFadden. So it's not yet known how rural water schemes will be managed within the local water done well reform.
I think it's important that our rural community in particular understands that.
Yes, absolutely.
Just within the CCO.
Well, I think the comment there is that it could change within the status quo as well. So
Okay.
it keeps it sort of generic, I think. Yeah.
No further discussion, questions? Right, I am happy to move that the council adopts the tabled Manawatū District Council consultation document for the local water done well public consultation as per attachment 1 of this report with amendments. Change the picture on the front cover, title change to local water done well for Manawatū District, add a comment near the front about how, no, that doesn't read quite well, about it is yet unknown how rural water schemes will be managed within the local water done well reform. And on page 3, remove the comment and cannot be reversed. And there's a couple of notes there. Consultation commencing on the 10th of March 2025, running through till 5 p.m. on Friday, the 11th of April 2025. And noting that council will formally resolve the final decision on the local water done well proposal at the council meeting on Thursday, the 15th of May 2025, following public consultation, consideration of public submission and deliberation. Maybe it should be an S on public submissions. Thank you. Right.
Can I query something? I query that 15th of May because I think somewhere we've got 17th of April in there.
The end of the constitution.
But,
I apologise. I think I'm confusing with DCs. I apologise.
Yeah, it says here 15th of May. Yeah.
So
Happy to second that.
but I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Ford, seconded. Okay, any further discussion? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. And just to say, well done, team. This has been a long journey. And I am really confident that we have done our homework. We have worked in the best interest of what's right for our community. And our preferred option stacks up with all of the evidence and data that we've pulled together. So well done to everybody. Well done, Lindsay and your team for the document. It looks great. And look forward to the discussion with the community. Now, I understand that the public meeting dates have been changed now.
Yes, there was one temporarily scheduled for Monday. We felt it was a little bit early, especially as we weren't printing the consultation document. So we have gone ahead and printed a DL flyer, a smaller one, so that's easier for you guys to carry around, hand out, and really push through to the communities along with the document. But those meetings are being decided on Monday, I believe, just formally with Shane. So we'll come back to you with those and invite you to all of those as well.
Great, thank you.
Can we ask that as soon as you made that change, that you're happy with, can we have a PDF copy of that?
Yes.
Because that would be really handy for us to be able to send out as councillors to.
Well, in discussion with our CE, because if you remember when we did the first feedback from the community on the previous government's mandated reform, we posted to every ratepayer to get engagement. We've had a discussion about that and decided that's an extensive cost to do that. So as soon as we have the finalised PDF, I was going to write a covering letter which will be sent to the chairs and secretaries for all community committees, asking them to please forward that on to all of their residents in their community, and just spelling out how it is how important it is that the community continue to give us feedback on this topic.
Could I ask your worship that you send a copy of that to us as well?
Absolutely,
Thank you.
yes.
So we can distribute amongst other networks?
Sure, spread it far and wide. Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just in terms of the cost of distributing something, I'm assuming that we have a significant number of ratepayers on email. Assume we do we?
We have a large number.
Large numbers,
we do.
but is it also considered too expensive to have perhaps drop something as an insert in the Fielding Herald?
That goes down to the comms plan.
Yeah, we haven't looked at an insert, but there will be ads in the paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great, excellent, right. No late items, so we can go straight to number 12. And I will move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of minutes.